Chapter 432. In the endless void, on the waterway from Mars to Earth, a huge man-made object called Yanglu City was cruising along the route from Mars to Earth at a seemingly slow speed, but in fact, it was moving at an extremely fast speed. Its destination was the cradle of humankind, Earth. Colludio, the Count of the Martian Weiss Empire, was carrying out an important mission. The importance of this mission would undoubtedly determine the direction of the Weiss Empire and Earth in the next 10 years. Therefore, Count Colludio, who had always been serious, strict, and rigorous, became even more serious when he left Mars for Earth. That look made the retainers and subordinates beside him subconsciously tense their nerves and put all their attention into this mission. Count Colludio, according to the current speed of Yanglu City, we will enter the Earth-Moon orbit in half an hour. Hearing his subordinates report, Count Colludio, who had been keeping a straight face, slowly nodded. Proceed according to the original plan. Count Colludio pondered for a moment, then asked, "What about Princess Ethelum? What is His Highness doing right now?" "Yes, Count Colludio, Her Royal Highness Princess Ethelum is now following the schedule and learning about Earth." Although this was a natural answer, Count Colludio's eyes still revealed a trace of dissatisfaction. This trace of dissatisfaction was not directed at the noble princess of the Martian Weiser Empire, Princess Ethelum Weiser Eliosia, but the fact that the noble princess had to personally learn about Earth. This made Count Colludio, who had a deep prejudice against Earthlings, extremely dissatisfied. But Count Colludio was loyal. He was loyal to the Weiss Empire's royal family, loyal to the current emperor of the Weiss Empire, and even more loyal to Princess Ethelum Weiss Elusia of the Martian Weiss Empire. "Time's up. Her Royal Highness should also rest. I'll leave this to you." Count Colludio turned the cane in his hand and ordered his henchmen. "Yes." Count Colludio, after leaving the bridge of Yanglu City, Colludio strolled in the city that belonged to him. Step by step, he made his way to the place that Princess Icelam liked to stay in ever since she came to Yanglu City. It was a balcony with a view of the scenery outside the city. She is a princess who has lived in the palace for a long time and is very curious about the outside world. This was the impression that Count Colludio had formed of Princess Ethelum during the escort. But this didn't mean that Count Colludio would look down on Princess Ethelum. On the contrary, Colludio believed that this was the essence of a future wise ruler. Only a king who was curious about the unknown but cautious would be able to lead the empire on a path of development and prosperity. This was Count Colludio's hope for Princess Ethelum's future. The footsteps stopped. Colludio stood in front of an automatic door. Behind this door, Princess Icelam should be there, doing her daily homework, staying on the balcony and observing the distance between the Earth and the Earth with her naked eyes. This might be Princess Ethelum's expectation for her trip to Earth. Whoosh! The automatic door opened. Count Colludio looked up. Sure enough, in the middle of the balcony, there was a girl with blonde hair, wearing a light, long dress and a smile on her face. Beside her was a young man wearing a retainer uniform, a young man from Earth. Colludio glanced at the young man from Earth, then said in his usual serious tone, "You're right, sir. So Her Royal Highness is here." The blonde girl met Colludio's gaze and smiled. "I'm Count Colludio. What's the matter?" "Yes, it's already late at night. Please go back to your room and rest." Colludio didn't hesitate to remind him that it was time for Princess Ethelum to rest. "Is that so? It's already this time? Then it's time for me to go back and rest." After that, the Martian princess turned to look at the young man from Earth. "Slain, that's all for today. See you tomorrow." "Yes, Your Royal Highness Princess Ethelum." Suddenly, just as Ethelum walked to Colludio's side, a violent vibration without warning caused Yanglu City to tremble violently. Caught off guard, Ethelum almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Colludio was standing right next to her and caught her in time. "Your Royal Highness, are you okay?" Colludio had a trace of worry on his face, but he was mostly calm. "No, I'm fine." "Count Colludio, what's going on?" Ethelum shook her head and steadied herself with Colludio's help. "Your Royal Highness, please wait a moment." Colludio shook his head and comforted Ethelum. He then turned to look at a corner of the room and asked loudly, "What's going on?" As Colludio's voice fell, a faint light fell from the top of the room and formed a projection screen in midair. This was a direct connection from the bridge of Yanglu City. "Count Colludio, your Royal Highness Princess Ethelum. Yanglu City seems to be under attack by an unknown force." "What? Unknown force? How is that possible? Earth definitely doesn't have the power to travel in deep space. Quick, find out what's going on for me. I'm coming to the bridge now." The bridge's inability to provide an answer made Colludio a little more dissatisfied. Regardless of whether it was out of concern for the safety of Yanglu City or the safety of Azirum, the Earl still made the decision to head to the bridge of Yanglu City at the first possible moment. "Your Royal Highness Princess Ethelum, I must go to the bridge immediately. Please forgive me for not being able to escort your Royal Highness back to your room." "Okay, Count Colludio, the safety of Yanglu City and everyone else is in your hands." Ethelum was very sensible. Although she didn't know what was going on, she still expressed her stance and let Colludio do what he was supposed to do. "Yes, your Royal Highness Ethelum." After respectfully responding to Ethelum, Colludio turned his head and stared at Serene. "Serene, from now on, until this matter is resolved, you are in charge of Princess Ethelum's safety. If anything happens to Princess Iselum, you'll have to pay for it with your life." "Yes, Count Colludio, I will use my life to protect Her Highness Princess Iselum." After being forced to make a decision against his will, Colludio quickly returned to the bridge of Yanglu City. Now, the bridge was in chaos. The attack that came out of nowhere left everyone scratching their heads, and at the same time, it increased their fear of death. No one would be unafraid of an invisible attack. "Calm down. The more panicked we are, the easier it is for the enemy to take advantage of the situation." Count Colludio knocked his cane on the cold floor a few times, trying to calm his subordinates down. In the end, Colludio's action was useful. The moment Colludio returned, the chaos on the bridge also disappeared. Is it an attack by the Earth Alliance army? No, not at all. The Earthlings can't break through our defense line and come here. The answer was obvious. Everyone agreed with Colludio's question in an instant. The Earthlings, who were blocked by the orbital night, had no way or ability to set foot in the deep space, which was almost the backyard of the Weiss Empire. Then, there was only one answer. Is it the orbital night? Colludio did not ask this question, because he knew it was impossible. Only a loyal knight could have access to the core of Yanglu City, which was also the foundation of the Weiss Empire on Mars. Aldnoah, an ancient relic technology with infinite possibilities. And this access could only be obtained through loyalty to the royal family. If it's not the Orbital Knights Rebellion, then who could it be? Suddenly, an absurd possibility popped into Colludio's mind. Is it the original owner of Aldnoah, the ancient race that has disappeared in the long river of time? However, reality did not give Colludio any time to think about the truth behind this sudden attack. The only thing he could do now was to instruct his retainers and subordinates to deal with this sudden attack as quickly as possible. Increase the search range of the radar. At the same time, prepare Tarsus. Yes, sir. At this moment, in Colludio's eyes, the attack that came out of nowhere was still ongoing. The only thing that Yanglu City knew was that the attack seemed to be from man-made objects. Although the attack was sudden, a few of his subordinates still managed to capture an image in time. From a familiar shape and weapon layout in the image, it was a killing weapon created by humans. Missiles. Like sharks in the deep sea, black shadows darted out of the darkness and surrounded the enormous Yanglu City, which looked like a fat prey, in order to attack. Again, and again, even though the space around Yanglu City was constantly flashing, the people on the bridge still could not determine the source of the attack. They could not even find the answer to where the attack came from. Colludio's left hand clenched his cane tightly. His eyes were also fixed on the main screen in front of him. The area on Yonglu City was constantly changing from green to yellow, and even to a dazzling red in the next moment. As time went by, as the tremors in Yonglu City grew more intense, he knew that if this continued, even if Yonglu City had a strong defense, it would still be exhausted to death by this invisible enemy. By then, not to mention Yonglu City, even Princess Ethelum would be buried in this deep space. Where's the enemy? Why can't even Yonglu City's radar detect the enemy? Deploy Tarsus immediately. Quick! In the end, Cludio made a decision that was not a decision. At this critical moment, as a Knight of Mars, he did not choose to escort Princess Ethelum to Mars. Instead, he chose to launch an attack with his beloved mech. Wait, Count Cludio, let me try. At this moment, an unexpected voice suddenly sounded in the bridge. As soon as they heard this voice, everyone froze. Even Count Cludio, who had made up his mind to launch an attack with his beloved mech, was shocked. Because of the entrance of the bridge, Princess Ethelum of Mars, who had changed into formal attire, was accompanied by a petite maid and the young man from Earth, Serene. Princess Ethelum, why are you here? Count Cludio, I'm sorry for coming here without permission at this critical moment. Also, please don't blame Serene for this, Count Cludio. This is my own decision, because I have an intuition. This is not a malicious attack. The Martian princess named Ethylum Visser Illusia had a look of determination in her eyes. Cludio did not immediately respond to Ethelum's words. Instead, he stared fiercely at Serene, then regretted his foolish decision in a moment of desperation. But even so, Cludio could not deny Ethelum's words. For Etheram Visser Illusia was the royal family to whom he had pledged allegiance. Yes, Her Royal Highness Princess Ethelum. Your wish, this subject will definitely fulfill it for you. But for your safety, Tarsus must be ready to attack at any time. Cludio compromised, but he still insisted on his bottom line. Ethelum nodded slightly and sincerely thanked him. Count Cludio, thank you very much for your tolerance. Then, I'll leave everything to you. I'm afraid. The violent tremors continued. Even the roars from the outer walls of Yonglu City had penetrated the heavy defenses and reached the bridge, reaching everyone's ears. The sound was so loud that some timid people could not help but swallow their saliva subconsciously. But when their eyes landed on the white figure standing in the middle of the bridge, waiting for the communication to be completed, they miraculously calmed down. This was the first princess of the Martian Weiser Empire, Her Royal Highness Princess Isolam Weiser Iliosia. I'm the first princess of the Mars Visser Empire, Princess Ethelum Visser Illusia. May I ask who is attacking our Yonglu City? If our journey has disturbed your excellency, I would like to offer you my sincerest apology in my name. But before that, I hope your excellency can be honest with us. It's not easy to meet a similar existence in this void of space. I, the Mars Visser Empire, hope to gain friendship under this starry sky, not war. I'm the first princess of the Mars Visser Empire, Princess Ethelum Visser Illusia. The existence that is attacking us, please be honest with us. At this moment, the image of the princess was pure and radiant. But under this radiance, Cludio held his cane tightly, ready to turn around and rush to his beloved Tarsus at any time to open a path for the princess to return to Mars. Will it work? The princess's speech on the international public channel was pure and flawless, but Cludio did not believe it would have any effect. But as soon as Ethelum's voice fell, the attack that came out of nowhere stopped. The tremors in Yonglu City also stopped. It worked. The enemy did not continue to attack. Cludio looked at his relieved subordinates and looked at Ethelum in disbelief. However, Cludio and even Ethelum did not know that the reason the attack stopped was not because of Ethelum's words, but because a silver-haired girl was tired of playing with Avalon. Well, Avalon's performance is beyond my imagination, and under such a large-scale attack, it can still maintain a fairly good stealth performance. What a good ship. But is it really okay for me to be the captain of this ship? The silver-haired girl looked at Euphemia, sitting in the guest seat, and Ray Minkai standing next to her. Talent must be used. This is His Majesty's principle. Teresa, this position belongs to you. Ray Minkai shook his head slightly, indicating that Teresa did not need to worry. Based on the method of teasing Yanglu City just now, there were probably not many people who were suitable to be the captain of Avalon. In that case, I'll accept your offer. Your Majesty. This was the first day Teresa followed Ray Minkai and the others to this world called Aldnoazaro. Chapter 433. It was as if it was a joke. No matter how hard Count Caludio and his subordinates tried to locate the enemy, they could not find any information related to the unknown enemy. The attacks of unknown origin continued. Perhaps it was when he took his first bite of breakfast in the morning. Or perhaps it was when he dragged his tired body to lie down and closed his eyes to sleep. Or perhaps it was when he was in a hurry to go to the toilet. The attack came. The attacks of unknown origin were like sticky candy, sticking to Count Caludio's Yanglu City. They did not give him or the people of Yanglu City a chance to rest. Although the subsequent attacks weren't as ferocious as the first attack, the timing of the attacks was so tricky that it caused everyone in Yanglu City to fall into a state of panic. There were many times when Count Caludio ordered Tarsus to attack, but the attacks of unknown origin would stop the moment Tarsus attacked. However, after Tarsus went back and forth to patrol the airspace around Yanglu City a few times and returned empty-handed, it bit the tail of Tarsus's return to Yanglu City and launched another attack. Is this a battle of fatigue? Caludio gritted his teeth in the face of this situation, but there was nothing he could do. Even Yanglu City, the strongest force in the Weiss Empire's expansion, could only silently endure the invisible and untouchable attacks. Moreover, this invisible enemy did not seem to have any intention of sinking Yanglu City. It was more of a tease, like an adult playing with a child. This made Caludio feel a deep sense of powerlessness. As a proud, orbital knight, he had never encountered such a moment of helplessness and humiliation. At the same time, in the face of Princess Ethelum, who insisted on sending communication messages to the surrounding airspace every time she was attacked, Caludio felt even more humiliated. However, compared to the humiliation in Caludio's heart, the newly appointed Teresa was in a much better mood. With the support of Ray Minkai and Euphemia, Teresa, who had become the new captain of Avalon, once again used the trick she used to train the son of Dan Nu. She looked for a seemingly strong target and then used it for the exercise. Therefore, when Avalon quietly left the transdimensional waterway and entered this world, it coincidentally encountered Yanglu City, which became Teresa's target. At first, Teresa was worried that Ray Minkai would refuse her idea because he was new to this world and was unfamiliar with the world. However, to her surprise, not only did Ray Minkai not stop her, he even agreed with her plan. Therefore, Yanglu City suffered a tragedy, especially after the girl who claimed to be the first princess of the Weiss Empire, Princess Ethelum Visser Iliasia, who had repeatedly requested a call. Ray Minkai allowed Teresa to act. Could it be that the knight and Princess Visser know each other? Sitting in the captain's seat, Teresa tilted her head slightly and looked at Yanglu City, which was being bullied by Avalon, who relied on the powerful stealth provided by the Utopia system. If one day, the people of Yanglu City found out that the object they were being bullied by was a cosmic battleship that was hundreds of times smaller than Yanglu City, their expressions would be very interesting. Thinking of this, Teresa raised her right hand and gestured to the left and right. As Teresa became more familiar with the powerful combat power of Avalon, the technicians on the bridge also became familiar with the beautiful new captain, and the tacit understanding between the two sides also improved in the process. On the other side, Ray Minkai and Euphemia were standing in the observation deck, looking at Yanglu City, which was being badly battered by Avalon. Kai, why did you let Teresa go? I'm afraid this attack is no longer a drill, right? As time went by, the so-called drill had become a one-sided trampling. especially when Euphemia learned that there was a girl in Yanglu City who claimed to be the first princess of the empire. Euphemia's curiosity was piqued. That's true, but this kind of activity should be over soon. Everyone should be familiar with the situation of Avalon. When Avalon first appeared in front of Ray Minkai, Royd had made it clear that not only was Avalon a brand new product, but it was also the crew's first ultra-long-distance voyage related to the hyperspace channel. Therefore, Avalon's current combat power was far from what was expected. This was also the reason why Ray Minkai allowed Teresa to use Yanglu City as the target of the drill. Is it Earth? Euphemia turned her head and looked out the window. In the deep darkness, a brighter and brighter planet was quietly growing larger under their gazes. The white light also gradually gained a hint of blue. Yes. Although Avalon's Utopia system is really surprising, to be on the safe side, after we enter the Earth-Moon orbit, it's better to temporarily stop all activities and turn to the investigation stage. Ray Minkai nodded and explained the operation plan after Avalon followed Yanglu City into the Earth-Moon orbit. Avalon could not appear for the time being. After all, in this world, except for the Yanglu City of the Weiss Empire, there were no human spaceships in the Earth-Moon orbit. In order to avoid trouble, at the same time, in order to avoid being played by Teresa, the humiliated Colludio united all the orbital night to besiege Avalon. It seemed that Avalon's disappearance would continue for a while. The Utopia can allow Avalon to hide in the Earth-Moon orbit for a while. But in terms of investigation, we may not be able to send many people, otherwise we may be discovered by the orbital night. From Ray Minkai's explanation, Euphemia also guessed that the Earth-Moon orbit was now firmly controlled by the orbital night. But don't worry too much about the orbital night. Euphemia showed a hint of doubt. Ray Minkai smiled and made some speculations based on his memory of this world. The Weiss Empire's orbital night. Although they were the first emperors of the Weiss Empire, and were also appointed by the current emperor, in private, they were not united. Many times, these knights loyal to the Weiss Emperor had their own selfish motives. At this point, Ray Minkai added another sentence. Just like the nobles of the Britannia Empire. Hearing this, the light in Euphemia's eyes dimmed slightly, but soon returned to normal. Ray Minkai was right. The empire was huge. However, while maintaining this huge territory under the powerful force required to create it, there were countless undercurrents surging. The conflict between the nobles was the biggest of these undercurrents. So, we can use this to hide the existence of Avalon? Yes. Also, I may have a goal now, but we still need to stay and observe for a while. Ray Minkai remembered that among the many orbital knights that landed on Earth, there was indeed an orbital knight who was still on the neutral side. Perhaps, in the next investigation, if done well, information about the Weiss Empire might be obtained from this orbital knight. Of course, this was a matter for the future. The most important thing now was to let Avalon smoothly enter the Earth-Moon orbit and hide its existence. This was also the basis for Avalon's future operations. Earth was close at hand. During this time, Colludio, who had been under pressure, suddenly found that he could finally rest for a while. The invisible enemy. An attack that could appear at any time, but would not cause much damage to Yanglu City. During this period of time, it had almost become his nightmare. Although Colludio could still hold on, some of the people in Yanglu City who could not withstand the pressure had already collapsed, becoming an unstable factor in Yanglu City. As long as the attack that they could not capture appeared, these people would madly howl crazily and madly with words related to death, constantly attacking the surrounding objects and people. In order to ensure the internal stability of Yanglu City, and to prevent these fanatics from affecting the mental stability of Princess Ethelum, Colludio even cruelly threw a few of the fanatics who were no longer crazy and had lost their value into space. Fortunately, on the night before entering the lunar orbit, Colludio, who had contacted the other orbital knights, finally discovered that the terrifying attack that followed him like a shadow had finally disappeared. Count Colludio, it seems that you don't look too good. It seems that the escort mission is not a good job. The main screen on the bridge flashed, and his friend, Count Zasbarum appeared on it. Yes, is indeed not a good job. Recalling the torture he had suffered during this time, Count Caludio, who had always been tough, lowered his head slightly, admitting that there were times when he was powerless. Caludio's statement surprised Zasbarum a little. He never thought that the tough Caludio would have such a side to him. It seems that you've really gone through a lot of hardship. Zasbarum sighed softly and said, That's right. Count Caludio, I've seen your Yanglu city. The support supplies will arrive soon. Please hold on for a while longer. In addition, the guard mission will be taken over by me, so please have a good rest. Zasbarum pondered for a moment, then continued to ask, How is Her Royal Highness? She's fine, but because of the unknown attack, she did not have a good rest. Is that so? Then, please let Her Royal Highness rest more. Otherwise, those lowly earthlings will laugh at us. In response, Caludio just nodded silently. With the disappearance of the unknown attack and the protection from the other Yanglu cities, Count Caludio and his men were finally able to rest in peace. However, they did not know that during this time, Avalon, which had been teasing Yanglu City for a long time, had quietly entered the Earth-Moon orbit and become a neighbor of Yanglu City when the surrounding Yanglu City appeared to rescue Count Caludio and his subordinates. We've arrived at the predetermined coordinates. We're now docking. All logistics personnel, seize the time to repair Avalon. This was the first action that was carried out when Avalon docked behind a large meteorite. The moon has been damaged to this extent. A series of exclamations sounded in the bridge of Avalon. The familiar yet strange appearance of the asteroid made everyone in Avalon cry out in surprise. How could this be? On the observation deck, Euphemia looked incredulously at the moon, which had been blown apart and scattered meteorites all over the Earth-Moon orbit. This is the current state of the world. UFFI. 15 years ago, during the war between the Martian Weiss Empire and Earth, the hyperspace gate on the moon suddenly went berserk. Under that terrifying energy explosion, not only was the moon blown up into such a miserable state, but the meteorites scattered from it also fell on the various continents on Earth. While causing irreparable damage to the cities on the various continents, it also changed the climate and environment of the entire Earth. Lei Minkai pointed at the blue planet that was covered by a large layer of clouds. Even the clouds could not hide the devastated potholes all over the continent. Was this man-made? Euphemia asked. No, maybe not. I don't know too much about the truth of the war 15 years ago. After all, I'm not from this world. What I've said is all that I know. Ray Minkai shook his head. Due to the impact of the second season of AZ that was cursed by thousands of people, Ray Minkai's understanding of AZ mostly stayed at a moderate level. Suddenly, Ray Minkai's gaze moved away from the blue planet below and fell on Euphemia's delicate face. Although I'm also a knight, my fate seems to be much better than Serene's. The former empress of the empire, the current empress, is already the person of my destiny. Thinking of this, Ray Minkai suddenly had the urge to see Serene, the poor man who tried everything to win all the possibilities for Princess Isilaram, but lost everything in the end. What's wrong? Kai, is there something on my face? Feeling Ray Minkai's gaze, Euphemia touched her face with some confusion. No, your majesty is still radiant today. Ray Minkai smiled and then looked at the blue planet below again. I'm just thinking that maybe our investigation should start. Otherwise, I'm afraid Miss Q will run away again. Chapter 434. It's so cold. On a snow-covered plain, a woman with long pink hair shrunk her neck subconsciously. At the same time, she pulled up her scarf to make herself feel warmer. Just as she pulled up her scarf, a thick and warm coat was draped over her body. Didn't I tell you to stay on Avalon? Look, it's so cold now. UFFI. Not only did the coat cover the woman, but his hands also carefully gathered the corners of the coat a few times to prevent the cold wind from invading the woman. Ray Minkai shook his head helplessly. I just want to see the difference in this world. The woman pursed her lips and defended her current actions. Can't you see the world by staying on Avalon? My lovely highness. Ray Minkai was destined to be helpless. The only person who could affect the girl in front of him, other than her royal sister Cornelia Libertania, was himself. And now, he had already landed on Earth. Therefore, even if Fianna, Royd, and the others on Avalon were unwilling, they could not stop the Empress of the Empire. That's different. How can I feel this cold if I stay on Avalon? The Empress of the Empire, Euphemia Libertania, pulled up the coat on her body and said with dissatisfaction, "Is that so?" Ray Minkai sighed slightly and shook his head. "Yes. I didn't expect the humans in this world to treat Earth so cruelly, and on top of that, destroy their own living environment." Euphemia walked in front of Ray Minkai and looked at Ray Minkai, who gave her his coat but was only wearing a suit. "Kai, let's find a place to shelter from the wind as soon as possible." Ray Minkai looked around, then turned back to look at the city in the distance that was still shining in the cold wind. It seems that we can only go over there. I'm afraid there's no other place around here that can compare to that. But if we just rely on walking, I'm afraid we can't get there in a short time, right?" Euphemia looked up at the sky that was quietly covered with dark clouds. Looking at the dark clouds and the cold wind that was getting stronger and stronger, it was likely that a blizzard would sweep across the plains in the near future. Yes, if it weren't for the fear of being discovered by the people in this world, maybe we could have landed closer to the city. Speaking of which, I really miss the teleportation device on the administration's Macross warship. Ray Minkai raised his hand and patted his pocket while sighing. Then he called out, "State Zero, stop sleeping. It's time for you to work." Ray Minkai's pocket rumbled, and a fluffy, pure white little head popped out. "You want me to come out in such cold weather?" His golden pupils still showed signs of sleepiness, and the white cat State Zero kept yawning. "Stop sleeping. Would a metallic life form like you be afraid of this little bit of cold? Come out. It's time to work. Otherwise, UFFI, and I will have to spend the night in the snowstorm." Ray Minkai patted the white cat Zero's little head in annoyance. Euphemia, who was standing at the side, couldn't help but smile. Even metal life forms have times when they are afraid of the cold. White cat Zero shook its little head. After a disdainful protest, it jumped down from the pocket and landed steadily on the snowy ground. Then, a gust of wind swept up the surrounding snow and submerged the white cat Zero on the snowy ground. This was not a sign of a snowstorm. Instead, the white cat Zero had once again changed from the white cat form to the wild lion form that it had previously released in the metal world. "Wild lion? State Zero, how many forms have you released?" This was Ray Minkai's first time seeing the white cat Zero release the wild lion form. One had to know that this was the latest version of the long-toothed lion in the latest soft mechanical beast animation. Although it was different from the traditional Sova mechanical beasts in terms of size and body design, the wild lion was still the newest design in the Sova mechanical beast series. He didn't expect the white cat Zero to be able to release the latest form. You haven't seen this form before?" The pure white wild lion tilted its head, and the voice of State Zero sounded around. "Oh, right. This seems to be the second time I have released the wild lion form. Hee. Kai, don't mind it. In this world, this form is the most suitable for traveling." The wild lion turned its head and looked at the city in the distance. Although the hunter gull long-fanged lion can undoubtedly reach the city in the shortest time, the huge body of the hunter gull long-fanged lion may cause some trouble. State Zero's consideration was naturally reasonable. Ray Minkai was only surprised by the appearance of the wild lion and did not question how State Zero could reach the city in the shortest time. However, according to the size of the wild lion, the exposed cockpit neck did not seem to be enough for two people to sit on. "Hey, Kai, do you still need me to remind you?" As if sensing Ray Minkai's hesitation, State Zero teased. "No, I know what to do." Ray Minkai sighed slightly and then looked at Euphemia. "Excuse me, My Highness." Amidst Euphemia's cries of surprise, Ray Minkai picked her up in a princess carry and jumped onto the wild lion's neck in an instant. Then, the steel hair on both sides of the wild lion's head extended back, and protected Ray Minkai and Euphemia. A layer of light blue shield rose, and, at the same time, it also isolated the continuous cold wind. I didn't expect you to be able to make this effect. The Wild Lion's original design did not have such an energy shield designed for the cockpit. Therefore, the energy shield that blocked the cold wind was probably State Zero's masterpiece. It's just a matter of moving my fingers, Claus. Moreover, I'm not the kind of stubborn person who will only hold on to the same old antiques. After seeing so many wonderful things in the world, I have to make some changes. With a flash of light, the projection of the white cat State Zero appeared on Ray Minkai's left side. The pair of golden pupils looked at Ray Minkai and Euphemia in his arms. But then again, this kind of change is always good. At least, in terms of pursuing the opposite sex, it will always have a good effect. State Zero, what are you talking about? I didn't expect you to be like this. In Ray Minkai's arms, Euphemia suddenly flew up 2 red clouds, and at the same time, she shouted, "Ha! Guy, UFFI, hold on tight." The wind rolled up, and a 3-meter-tall wild lion lowered its head slightly, turned into a gust of wind, swept across the snow-covered plains, and rushed towards the city in the distance. Mars, the first empress of the Weiss Empire, Princess Islam Weiss-Elusia, is about to visit Earth. Now, while making the final preparations and inspections for the welcoming ceremony, the various places have increased the investment of security forces in order to prevent any accidents from happening during this friendly visit about the future of Earth and Mars. The television on both sides of the street was constantly broadcasting news about the upcoming friendly visit of the Martian princess to Earth. On the street, there were some serious-looking security personnel in uniform, scanning the pedestrians back and forth in order to prevent any unexpected situations. This did not mean that the Martian princess would start the first friendly visit in this city, but in order to prevent some people from causing unrest on a global scale, the Earth Alliance Army decided to set up quite objective security forces in major cities around the world. The inspection here is really strict. In the corner of the street, in a coffee shop, Euphemia took off her sunglasses and looked at the security personnel on the street. After all, it is a friendly visit between 2 planets. Ray Minkai picked up a small spoon, stirred the coffee with milk and sugar cubes, and said, "Although we're both humans, we've already become strangers?" Euphemia pondered for a moment, and then was awakened by the coffee in front of her. "Don't think so much. This matter is not something that can be understood simply by thinking about it." Ray Minkai still had a general impression of why the world had become like this. But now is not the time to talk about this, because a motorcade had already appeared on the television in the middle of the coffee shop. It was a motorcade that was locked on by countless cameras. It was also the focus of attention by humans all over the world today. It was the motorcade of the Martian Weiss Empire's first empress, Princess Islam Weiss-Elusia. I'm afraid it won't go so smoothly. For some reason, Euphemia lowered her eyes slightly and sighed quietly. Yeah. This did not mean that Ray Minkai had told Euphemia about the possible future developments, but Euphemia, as the Empress of the Empire, made a judgment about the current situation between Earth and Mars with her vision and experience. Euphemia's judgment was correct. Ray Minkai's memory was also correct. Amidst the sudden exclamations in the coffee shop, several missiles with long flames suddenly rushed out from the depths of the street and crashed into the motorcade one after another. Amidst the loud roar, amidst the piles of flames rising into the air, the moment the limousine with excellent anti-impact structure and bulletproof performance rolled powerlessly in the middle of the road, a blonde girl in a gorgeous white dress also fell out of the car. Before the surrounding cameras locked on the blonde girl, the last missile suddenly fell from the sky, swallowing the girl and the overturned limousine. Boom! The loud roar that swallowed the girl and the limousine tore the entire coffee shop apart. The exclamations from before had already disappeared. What was left was silence, as well as fear in hindsight. Before the arrival of the Martian princess, Earth had been constantly promoting news about her, and at the same time, after this friendly visit, the tension between the two sides was bound to be eased. Everything would become beautiful. This was the propaganda slogan released by Earth earlier. However, ding-ling-ling, before the people in the coffee shop could react, the door was pulled open. Kai, the war is about to begin. Standing outside the coffee shop, Euphemia said in a deep voice as she looked at the pale-faced security guard who was getting more and more nervous as he pressed his headset to communicate with the security guard. Yeah, the war is about to begin. Even if the one who died is not the Martian princess. Ray Minkai's side, but at the same time, it also attracted Euphemia's doubts. Not the Martian princess? A substitute? As the Empress, Euphemia almost instantly guessed the meaning of Ray Minkai's words. But so what if she guessed it? Euphemia shook her head slightly. The war is already unavoidable. I'm afraid those Orbital Knight won't care if the one who died is a substitute or not. What they care about is the fact that the Earth Alliance army killed the Weiss Empire's princess. And Ray Minkai nodded, then raised his head to look at the sky above his head. At this moment, the dark clouds had dispersed, allowing the rays of sunlight to scatter in the city. However, Ray Minkai knew that these rays of sunlight would probably be the last light scattered in the city. UFFI, I want to do something. Suddenly, Ray Minkai seemed to have a firm idea in his heart. Do it. Kai, I will support you. Euphemia did not ask, and just supported Ray Minkai as always. State 0, stop sleeping. Time to work. Ray Minkai nodded and patted his pocket familiarly. Work? What work? Are you waiting to go to heaven? The sleepy white cat State 0 muttered as it poked its head out of his pocket. Who knew? Ray Minkai actually nodded seriously. Yes, we're going to go to heaven and shoot those flies down. What? On the Earth-Moon orbit. After learning that the convoy was attacked, and the result was complete destruction, the Orbital Knight of the Weiss Empire could finally launch the long-awaited activity, an attack on Earth. Look, among the Orbital Knight, Count Zasbrum, who had great prestige, was raising his arms and shouting. Our Princess Izeralam's sincere prayer for peace was ruthlessly trampled on by the vicious and despicable people of Earth. We, the loyal subjects of the Weiss Empire, must take a firm and righteous judgment against the cruelty of the old humans. The proud Knight of Mars. Now is the time of judgment, the long-cherished wish of the past to descend to Earth, at this moment, through our hands. On this day, above the Earth's sky, the sword of Damocles formed by the 37 Orbital Knight of the Weiss Empire that had been hanging high above the heads of the Earth Alliance army finally fell. On this day, the sky was torn apart, but at the same time, it was also terrifying. This was not only for the Earth, but for the Orbital Knight of the Weiss Empire, especially the Orbital Knight that landed on the ancient Eastern land. It became even more terrifying, because above the ancient Eastern land, a terrifying beast was quietly waiting for the arrival of these proud Knight of Mars. Chapter 435. Count Zasbrum raised his arm and called out, and all the Orbital Knight who had been eyeing Earth for a long time responded. Even the steady Count Caludio was silent. He just turned around and ordered his men to follow. He was determined to participate in this revenge, but in fact, it was just an opportunity brought about by the death of Princess Iselaram to launch the long-planned invasion plan in one fell swoop. Yes, this was an invasion. However, in the heart of Count Caludio, who was loyal to Princess Iselaram, this was just a trial for the murderer who maliciously toyed with Princess Iselaram's good intentions. Yanglu City, which was hovering in the Earth-Moon orbit, changed its orbit one after another and entered the atmosphere at the fastest speed. Then, the Judgment Power built with Yanglu City as the main body hit the head of the Earth Alliance army. At this moment, a dazzling light flashed across the sky. This was the light of Yanglu City's rapid descent, and it also represented the last light of countless lives that were about to be lost. Go! We are the Orbital Knight of the Martian Weiss Empire. We will pay tribute to our noble princess, Isilaram, Weiss Iliosia, with supreme victory. Similar cheers could be heard from Yanglu City as they landed. It seemed that at this moment, the news of Princess Isilaram's death had ignited the flames of revenge in everyone's hearts, and they wholeheartedly devoted themselves to the revenge and trial of the Earth Alliance army. In the night sky favored by the meteors, the most dazzling and largest cities on Earth's continents became the targets of Yanglu City. The moment the first light tore through the darkness from the lonely vast continent, the first wave of attacks launched by the orbital night of the Martian Weiss Empire had already begun. At the same time, in the sky above the Pacific Ocean, in the clouds that covered a large area of the sky, a pair of cold golden eyes coldly looked at the balls of light that rose from the continent one after another. It's begun. A sigh sounded. Well, it's begun. Without any power, even if she has the title of the princess, she will only become a victim of the conspiracy. Another voice sounded. Well, maybe, but now is not the time to talk about this. Ray Minkai nodded and patted the console in front of him. State 0 begin. Within the clouds, a cold light burst out from the pair of ice-cold, golden pupils. Kai, are you serious? That big guy isn't that easy to deal with. State Zero's gaze pierced through the thick layer of clouds and looked at the 9 heavens, the huge man-made object that was shrouded in flames, Yanglu City. It was a Yanglu City that was falling towards the Shanghai city of the ancient eastern country. There was no doubt that the moment Yanglu City began to move, Avalon, who was lurking in the Earth-Moon orbit, immediately transmitted all the orbit calculations of Yanglu City to Ray Minkai. 3 more minutes. State 0 lowered its huge steel lion head slightly, as if it was thinking about something. It's not too late to regret now. Kai, at the end of the day, even if you were born in that ancient eastern country, you are now a knight captain of the Britannia Empire. Ray Minkai smiled at State Zero's words. He said in a clear voice, maybe that's right, but a qualified knight will not stand by and watch when his country is in danger. Hey, now you admit that you are a knight. State 0 sneered. But even if you stop Yanglu City, I'm afraid your country will not know about your efforts. Moreover, you can only save one area. Haha, so what? Even if I can only save one area, there are at least millions of people living in it. Ray Minkai laughed and did not care about State Zero's words. However, as soon as Ray Minkai finished speaking, Euphemia, who was sitting in the rear driver's seat, spoke up. I remember Kai's efforts. I have always seen it. Not only me. I believe the people of the Britannia Empire will know about all the glorious deeds of the Britannia Empire Knight, Ray Minkai. In the name of Britannia, I hereby swear. Euphemia's sudden solemnity made State 0 speechless. Then he laughed and said, Hey, Kai, no matter which world you are in, you are always so lucky. Is that so? Ray Minkai shook his head slightly, and then his eyes focused. UFFI, State 0, Yanglu City is coming. 3 minutes was not a long time, but it was not a short time either. As State 0, Ray Minkai, and UFFI were talking, the 3 minutes passed by quietly. Looking up, the thick clouds had already broken through, and Yanglu City, which was shrouded in flames, had already torn open the sky, brazenly appearing in front of the giant steel lion soaring in the sky. Roar! The giant steel lion's roar resounded through the sky, facing the brazen, tearing open the sky and falling straight to the ground. State 0 put away all thoughts of teasing Ray Minkai and wholeheartedly put his spirit and power into the giant steel lion that was now completely new. Ramda. This name was derived from the homophone of the Lambda drive system. Ramda, the tusked lion. It was equipped with the Lambda drive system, and, at the same time, it was equipped with the soft mechanical beast from Lancelot's Lightwing system. There was no need to be surprised. This was a new form that White Cat State 0 secretly tinkered with. Under the pair of golden light wings was the ferocious and sacred pure white tusked lion. The giant lion's roar resounded through the sky, and under the brilliance of the golden light wings, the pure white giant lion fearlessly soared into the sky, straight towards the rapidly falling Yonglu City. At this moment, in the eyes of ordinary people, the huge tusked lion was like a baby in front of a giant in the face of the even bigger Yonglu City. The only difference was that the weak baby did not have any lethality, but the rammed-tusked lion had the power to threaten Yonglu City. Close, close. The huge fireball of Yonglu City and the golden light spot of the rammed-tusked lion collided with each other at the moment the sun set. The darkness that swept in with the setting sun did not even take a step forward before it was stopped by a sun that was 100 times more dazzling than the setting sun in the west. Moreover, in the middle of the sun that the naked eye could not look directly at, the pure white long-fanged lion that spread its golden wings abruptly raised its razor-sharp right claw that was shrouded in a faint smoke-like glow and smashed it down viciously at the front of Yonglu City. Boom! The lion's claw fell, and countless cracks crazily extended outwards like a spiderweb. In the blink of an eye, in addition to leaving an extremely dazzling crack on the surface of Yonglu City, the landing trajectory of Yonglu City deviated from the original flight path. Warning! Warning! Count Fermion. Yonglu City is under attack. It has deviated from the original flight path. In Yonglu City, Fermion, whose thoughts were disrupted by the sudden tremors, had not yet figured out the situation and was awakened by the exclamation of his subordinates. How is this possible? I wanted to find out what's going on. Yonglu City is definitely not under attack. The people on Earth will not even think about the actions of us orbital knight. As one of the 37 orbital knight of Mars, Fermion waved his right hand and shouted at his subordinates. In his opinion, the accident of Yonglu City's orbit deviation was definitely caused by the incompetence of his subordinates. As for whether it was due to other reasons, Fermion did not think much about it. Therefore, his only thought now was to complete the landing of Yonglu City as soon as possible and seize the territory she wanted. In this way, she would have a greater say among the 37 orbital knight of Mars. However, boom, another tremor, and this time, it was even more intense than the previous tremors. Count Fermion, Yonglu City's landing trajectory has deviated again. Now, we have deviated from the original target city. After correction, the result shows that the landing coordinates of Yonglu City should be somewhere in the Western Pacific Ocean. What? Western Pacific Ocean? How is that possible? Our target is the city. The territory. How could it be the ocean? Fermion screamed, as if she did not want to accept the change in front of her. Then, the news that made her even more shocked and angry came. Count Fermion, the reason for Yonglu City's deviation has been found. Now, put on the main screen. In the surprised voice of his subordinates, Fermion saw a shocking scene. On the familiar silver-gray outer wall, a steel behemoth that no one had seen before, including Fermion, was slapping the outer wall of Yonglu City again and again. Boom, boom. Every time it slapped, the rapidly falling Yonglu City would shake violently. Every time it slapped, the calculation of the predetermined orbit displayed on the bottom left of the main screen would deviate. Falling, this was a veritable fall. Under the continuous slapping of the silver behemoth, Yonglu City, which was arrogantly judged by the Earth Alliance Army, fell from the sky and fell towards the endless ocean. No, Fermion screamed. She knew, her subordinates all knew, Yonglu City, which fell from the sky, was terrifying to the Earth Alliance Army. But during the process of falling, Yonglu City was fragile. It was so fragile that as long as the right angle was found, a slight collision could drag Yonglu City into eternal damnation. Now, what the pure white behemoth did could make Yonglu City fall into the abyss of eternal damnation. No! Quick! Stop it! Stop that beast! Fermion did not want to know when the pure white behemoth appeared and why it appeared. She only knew that if she did not drive the pure white behemoth away, her Yonglu City might really fall into the deep ocean. At that time, not to mention seizing a greater voice among the 37 Knight of Mars, she might not even be able to guarantee that she could survive this sudden accident. Fermian's screams made her subordinates frantically look for a way to drive the pure, white line away from Yanglu City, but it was to no avail. Whether it was machine guns or missiles, they could not cause even a trace of interference to the pure white behemoth. In the end, they could only watch as the pure white behemoth raised its right claw again and slapped the same place. Boom! Boom! The giant beast's slap was like a heartbeat. Then, it slapped everyone's heart again. It slapped on Fermian's heart. When responding to Count Zasbrum's request, the high-spirited Countess Fermian would never have thought that she, who should have completed her landing plan and conquered a territory, would encounter such an unbelievable yet real change that happened to her today. No, no, no. No one would believe that the Countess, who was still high-spirited a moment ago, would be hit to such an extent in just a few minutes. The Countess, who could not accept the scene in front of her, stared blankly at the pure white behemoth slapping the outer wall of Yanglu City again and again on the main screen. Suddenly, the Countess clenched her teeth hard, and a trace of blood quietly flowed from the corner of her tight mouth. Absolutely, absolutely. I can't let you succeed so easily. The Countess shouted loudly. Greece! Prepare for Greece. I'm going to attack. However, before the Countess could leave the bridge, a greater and more intense impact followed closely, causing the Countess to almost lose her footing and stagger to the ground. Report the situation. The Countess looked up and found that the pure white giant lion on the main screen had disappeared at some point. It was replaced by a barren island with sparse coconut trees growing on it. The bleak scene made Fermian feel regret, but also secretly glad. At least, his Yanglu City would not fall into the deep ocean and wait for the other orbital night to embarrass him. Where's the giant beast? Find it for me. After confirming that his Yanglu City did not fall into the ocean, Fermian finally regained some confidence and began to calmly issue new orders. Looking for it. The subordinates who had already acted were working very hard, but they did not find any clues related to the pure white giant beast. Can't find it. How is that possible? It suddenly appeared in the landing orbit of Yanglu City and could even accurately target the weakness of Yanglu City. Such an enemy should not retreat just like that. As soon as this thought arose, a faint explosion suddenly entered Fermian's ears. What did you find? Earl Fermian. Yanglu City has been invaded. The invaders have broken into the 3rd floor. Our soldiers have no power to fight back at all. The sound of gunfire intertwined, and in the flickering passage, a petite and light figure shuttled through the rain of bullets like a ghost. Every time she leaped into the midst of the soldiers guarding Yanglu City, a dazzling and bloody sword light would be set off, killing the soldiers one by one. And behind her, the person who followed closely behind this petite and terrifying ghostly figure was a girl who had the same face but was wearing protective gear. She skillfully used the gun in her hand to provide firepower support to the petite ghostly figure who was slaughtering in front of her. This was not all the invaders that Fermian saw through the main screen. In the vicinity of this frightening duo of girls, a similarly well-trained combat force, whose combat standards were firmly suppressed by Fermian's subordinates, launched an attack on Yanglu City. In the face of the powerful attack of this enemy that suddenly appeared, the soldiers of Yanglu City had no power to fight back. Chapter 436. Stop them? That was impossible. As long as one was not an idiot, they would have guessed that Fermian's Yanglu City had been targeted by someone from the very beginning. In the beginning, he had been so ambitious to be the first to land on Earth and fight for a new territory. But now, it seemed that it was just a joke. Pass down the order. Everyone in Yanglu City is to mobilize. Repel the invaders. We'll talk about the rest later. What was more important? Fermian, who had calmed down, was clear. In the face of the well-prepared invaders, the only advantage Fermian and his men could take advantage of was their familiarity with Yanglu City and the fact that Fermian could shut down Aldnoah. As long as they could shut down Aldnoah at the right time, Even if their counterattack failed and Yanglu City fell, the invaders would only get a bunch of useless trash. The counterattack had begun. However, it was useless. The invaders' attack was fierce. No matter how they took advantage of the terrain, they could not stop the invaders from advancing. They could not even slow them down. In particular, the two girls with the same face actually relied on their petite bodies to break through the passage to the bridge alone and without help. Even if they had loaded guns and weapons that were more powerful than the twin swords and semi-automatic rifles in the hands of the two girls, they could not stop the girls from advancing. The only thing they could do was to look at the long-haired girl at the back. Although her attacks seemed sparse, they were just right. Every shot she made was able to accurately predict the attack rhythm of the soldiers of Yanglu City. From there, the short-haired girl who wielded two swords in her hands would provide an opportunity to attack. Every time she swung her sword, the sword light would be as gorgeous as a ghost. The bullets whistled. Xia Yulan, who had long been used to shuttling through the rain of bullets, moved nimbly and quickly toward the enemy. She would not stop until she killed the enemy with a swing of her sword. As for whether she would be killed by the enemy, Xia Yulan did not think about it, because she knew that her sister, Xia Yufang, who was standing behind her, would protect her. Just like now, the moment the flames of different lengths lit up the passage, Xia Yulan rushed to the front of the enemy. Then a terrifying and strange sword dance once again bloomed in the passage leading to the bridge. The only difference was that Xia Yulan, who had killed all the enemies that blocked the Gemini's advance, was standing in front of the bridge door, waiting for Xia Yufang to arrive. "Are you hurt?" While moving quickly, Xia Yufang asked as she looked around to make sure that no one had slipped through the net while changing magazines. "No, I'm just a little tired. It's been a long time since I've fought such a high-intensity battle." Xia Yulan shook her head slightly as her hands gripped the blades that were still dripping blood. Since the Gemini joined Rei Mingkai's side, it had been a long time since they had carried out such a high-intensity and dangerous mission. At the moment when she swung her sword, Xia Yulan felt as if she had returned to the cold feeling she had when she had obeyed 9 dragons' orders to kill her target. "Do you want to take a break?" Xia Yufang flipped her hands, and the empty magazine was replaced by a new one. "No, let's continue. If we delay any longer, I'm afraid that the enemy will stop the reactor." Xia Yulan shook her head, indicating that she still had the strength to continue fighting. "Old Noah. Then, let's move faster." Xia Yufang corrected Xia Yulan's way of addressing Old Noah, then took out a cracking device from her waist and stuck it on the side of the door leading to the bridge. "Didi." The small screen on the cracking device flashed with a series of words that Xia Yufang had never seen before, and the door in front of the Gemini opened. At the same time, the moment the door opened a gap, a burst of terrifying gunfire suddenly sounded from behind the door. In the blink of an eye, the slowly opening door was drowned out by the whistling bullets. Gemini, who reacted quickly and hid behind the door, was unable to launch an attack. They could only silently listen to the continuous gunshots and wait for an opportunity to appear. A bunch of trash. A bunch of trash. When the Gemini's rapid attack broke through the door of the bridge, Fermion, who had just calmed down, once again fell into a violent rage. She couldn't imagine that her subordinates couldn't even stop 2 girls, allowing them to directly walk through the passage and stand in front of the bridge door. If it weren't for the fact that there were still some soldiers guarding the bridge, she would have been taken down by these 2 girls of unknown origin. At this point, Fermion only had one way left. That was to lower her noble head and send a distress signal to the other orbital knight. After all, lowering her head and asking for help was better than being a prisoner. Just that, "Didi Didi." Amidst the gunfire, a notification sound came from Xia Yufang's earpiece. "Yulan." The other party sent a distress signal. And then, Xia Yulan swung her right hand, throwing the dark red, dripping from the blade to the ground. "We failed." Sir's prediction was correct. These so-called orbital knight had no intention of cooperating at all, and when they landed on Earth, they were even more vigilant against each other. Is that so? In that case, They're nothing more than rabbits that we've locked up in a cage. That's right. The firepower guarding the bridge had yet to stop, and there wouldn't be a chance for Gemini to attack in a short period of time. However, Fermian's distress signal was obviously a failure. Because, above the sea where Yanglu City was located, the sky was filled with unknown interference. Other than Rei Mingkai's people, no one else could send a message to the outside world. This was the desperate struggle of a trapped beast. Fermian's side was doomed to fail. The only thing that Gemini could pay attention to was to not let Fermian have the chance to shut down Aldnoah. As for the changes in the outside world, it was left to Rei Mingkai and Euphemia to deal with. Time returned to the moment when Fermian's Yanglu City had just landed on the deserted island. The pure white long-fanged lion that shot down Yanglu City did not stop, but instead, it rose into the air again. Under the combined propulsion of the Lambda Drive system and the Light Wing system, it once again returned to the ninth heaven and looked at the other Yanglu City that was rushing into the atmosphere from the nothingness of space. We can't catch up, Kai. Even with the Lambda Drive system and the Light Wing system, the current long-fanged lion can't catch up to Yanglu City. After calculating the speed of both sides, State Zero rejected Rei Mingkai's idea. However, Rei Mingkai did not seem to have the intention to catch up, and instead, he had other plans. State Zero, can you make Yanglu City leave some things behind? Things? At this distance, ordinary weapons can't hit Yanglu City at all. A weapon with such a long range is not something the current Lambda long-fanged lion can withstand. Unless you let the long-fanged lion return to the ground and attack in its Bangsa form, it might be possible. State Zero rejected Rei Mingkai's idea. The current pure white long-fanged lion had the ability to fly due to the combination of the Lambda Drive system and the Lightwing system. However, in terms of weapon choice, it could not reach the extreme level of the Bangsa long-fanged lion. At this moment, the communication from Avalon was suddenly connected. La la la. Your Majesty, Knight Captain, this is Avalon. I'm Royd. I heard that the Knight Captain and Your Majesty have encountered some trouble. Maybe I can solve it for you. In a flash, Royd's avatar appeared on the screen. Royd, what do you have? Do you have any ideas? Euphemia glanced at the distant Yanglu City that was rapidly breaking through the atmosphere. Electromagnetic cannon. The electromagnetic cannon that Mira and Nami worked together to modify. Maybe it can satisfy the needs of the Knight Captain and Your Majesty. Do it. Fire now. Before Royd's voice died away, Rei Mingkai immediately made a decision. Fire. Royd, there's not much time left. Euphemia added. Yes, Your Majesty. Knight Captain. Perhaps it was because Rei Mingkai and Euphemia had long been confident. The moment Rei Mingkai and Euphemia both nodded in agreement, Avalon, hidden in the meteorite belt, immediately fired an electromagnetic cannon attack at Yanglu City that had already been locked on. The cannonball, like a meteor in broad daylight, only drew a fleeting trajectory in the atmosphere before it penetrated the poor Yanglu City in the blink of an eye. It forcefully peeled off a huge wreckage that was hundreds of meters long and about 100 meters wide from the petal-like buildings of Yanglu City. At the same time, the moment the wreckage peeled off from Yanglu City, the city that was hit by this attack fell into the same situation as Fermian's Yanglu City. Violent tremors, explosions. There was also a terrible heat that permeated through the gap. This sudden turn of events caused the people of Yanglu City to fall into a state of panic. If no measures were taken, Yanglu City was afraid that before it could land on the ground, it would be torn apart by the atmosphere due to the sudden tear in the outer wall and fall into the end of disintegration in the air. However, this had nothing to do with Rei Mingkai and the others, because Rei Mingkai's purpose had been achieved, and Avalon, who had fired the electromagnetic cannon, quietly lurked in the meteorite belt again, waiting for the next actual attack. Yanglu City, surrounded by rolling black smoke and surrounded by flames, quickly descended and brushed past the pure, white, long-fanged lion. How unfortunate! Looking at the Yanglu City that was hit by the electromagnetic cannon, White Cat State Zero was somewhat gloating. Kai, look over there. That piece of wreckage flew to the other side. Euphemia, who was sitting in the back seat, suddenly pointed in another direction. Lei Mingkai took a look. What a guy. Under the influence of the high-altitude airflow, the piece of wreckage that peeled off from Yanglu City seemed to have changed its falling trajectory and flew in another direction. Suddenly, Ray Mingkai had an idea. He pressed the small keyboard hidden on his right hand and quickly entered some parameters for calculation. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Then, this piece of wreckage became a skateboard under the pure, white, long-fanged lion's feet, a skateboard that rode the wind. Today's wind is quite good. The Orbit Knight's declaration of war was swift. But from the moment they launched the attack, the entire Earth entered a state of emergency. However, it was not until Yanglu City landed in the major cities that the humans on Earth reacted. The civilians quickly evacuated, and the soldiers entered a level 1 combat state on the spot. At this moment, no one could survive. However, for Jie Mount and Afin in New Luyuan City, it was a terrible day. First, they witnessed the assassination of the first princess of the Mars Weiss Empire. Then, they were driven by the emergency broadcast and had to cancel their original plan to go to school. Instead, they returned home to pack their belongings and prepare to evacuate. In the midst of the panic, Jie Mount and Afin was able to catch up with the last armored vehicle that evacuated to the port. However, when he boarded the armored vehicle, he happened to meet a foreign girl who boarded the armored vehicle with him on the road. He was ridiculed by his good friends, Jago Kuo and Gamu Graftman. In addition, it was the evacuation journey shrouded in tension and dullness. However, the journey was not too long, because when Jie Mount in Nathan's armored vehicle had just completed half of the evacuation journey, an unexpected encounter occurred in front of them. Armored cavalry. The armored cavalry developed by the Earth Alliance Army to fight against the Mars Weiss Empire blocked their way. Moreover, the pilot who piloted the gray-green armored cavalry, named Arion, was Jie Mount and Nathan's sister, Jie Mount Shui. Accidents came one after another. The reunion of his family did not bring him joy. Instead, it brought him the despair of being forced into a dead end. It was not a coincidence that Jie Mount Shui appeared on Jie Mount in Nathan's evacuation route. Instead, Jie Mount Shui's team was almost annihilated by the extremely bloated armored cavalry from the Mars Weiss Empire that was far larger than Arion. The only ones left were Jie Mount Shui herself and Juhu Koichiro, whose life and death was unknown. And Afin, don't worry about me. You guys retreat first. In order to cover the safe evacuation of her brother, Jie Mount and Afin, Jie Mount Shui changed the tactic of fighting while retreating. Instead, she adopted the tactic of frontal attack with a slim chance of victory. This was undoubtedly seeking her own death. From the situation when Jie Mount Shui's team was annihilated, no matter what attack, it could not hit the extremely large and bloated Mars armored cavalry. In order to protect her brother, Jie Mount Shui might have already decided to die. In fact, in less than a minute, Jie Mount Shui's Arion was defeated. If it were not for her good luck, Jie Mount Shui's Arion might have followed the same ending as her teammates, being swallowed by something and disappearing from this world. Quick, quick, can't we increase our speed? With Jie Mount Shui hanging on Arion, the armored vehicle that Jie Mount and Afin was in frantically increased its speed to the limit. But it was unable to increase the distance between it and the terrifying and strange Mars cavalry. Despair filled the air at this moment. Yunko, quick, turn. At this moment, Jie Mount and Afin, who peeked out from the skylight to observe the situation, suddenly shouted. In the next moment, when Yunko subconsciously drove the armored vehicle into the street ahead, a roar that tore through the air suddenly came. Then, there was a huge roar that swallowed all the sound, as well as a violent tremor that seemed to overturn the earth. In the smoke and dust that filled the sky, Jie Mount and Afin, who sensed that something was wrong, immediately rushed out from the armored vehicle that had unfortunately crashed into a roadside shop in the shockwave just now. She immediately checked the condition of Arion, who was hanging on the back of the armored vehicle. After confirming that Jiamaun Shui had only fainted, she turned around to look at the other side of the street, the place where the roar and tremor came from. The street that had returned to silence was blown by the cold wind, bringing away the smoke and dust that filled the sky, revealing the devastated street that was torn apart by cracks. And at the end of the street, the Mars cavalry with unknown and terrifying abilities quietly knelt there. A thin and straight iron rod pierced through its back, deeply piercing into the street that was full of cracks. Fatal injury? Jiamaun in Nathan stepped forward, quickly ran across the street, and came in front of the Mars cavalry that should have lost its ability to move. Suddenly, Inasail, who had arrived in front of the Mars cuirassiers, was shocked to find that the iron staff that had pierced through the Mars cuirassiers was not a staff, but a steel wreckage that was so huge that it could almost cover the entire street. And on this wreckage, there seemed to be a few faint claw marks that seemed to be left by a beast. Chapter 437. The huge wreckage fell from the sky and pierced straight into the back of the Mars armored cavalry. But the strange thing was that it was not the huge wreckage that pierced through the back of the Mars armored cavalry, but a long iron rod the size of a child's arm. Ainafan, where are you? Sister Shui fainted in the cockpit of that body. Just as the world-mound Ainafan was looking at the iron rod that pierced through the back of the Mars cuirassier, the childhood sweetheart carefully crossed the broken road and came to the side of the world-mound Ainafan. At the same time, when she just stopped beside Ainafan, she also saw the strange scene in front of her. However, her attention was obviously not on the question of why the huge wreckage pierced through the Mars armored cavalry, leaving only the iron rod that pierced through the chest. Instead, she was greatly relieved, because, in the chase just now, every time this huge and bloated Mars body passed by a place, the buildings, road facilities, and even the surrounding trees would be swallowed by something and no longer exist in this world. It was the first time Ainafan had seen such a strange thing. It's finally killed. Although I don't know who killed it, we are safe now. Ainafan sighed with relief, then suddenly screamed. Yes, Ainafan. Sister Shui is still in the body. Let's go back and help. Okay. Let's go back. Ainafan retracted her gaze, turned around, and followed behind Ainafan, and left the Mars armored cavalry that was destroyed by the wreckage that fell from the sky. Woo-woo. The tension brought about by the thrilling chase had yet to dissipate. Jiezhong Ainafan and the others tried to get the armored vehicle out of the destroyed shop. At the same time, they were also able to rescue Jiezhong Shui from the cockpit of the mech and gain some space to move. It's not working. It seems to be stuck. The engine of the armored vehicle roared hoarsely, but it was still unable to get the armored vehicle and Aryan, who was hanging behind the vehicle, out of the shop. The driver shook his head helplessly. Can we only try to clean up the debris and rescue the warrant officer Jiamaun? Yehalai Tsongjun pointed at the debris blocking the roof of the armored vehicle. No, in that case, it's too slow. I'm afraid we won't be able to catch the last evacuation ship. Ainafan rejected Yehalai Tsong's suggestion, but in the next second, he didn't have a better idea. At this moment, Ainafan, who was also thinking about how to rescue Aryan, suddenly felt as if something was rubbing her calf. Huh, cat? When Yunzi looked down and realized that the thing that was hugging her was actually a white cat with pure white fur and a pair of unbelievably beautiful golden pupils. If it was any other time, the young girl would definitely squat down and play with this beautiful little white cat. Now, Web Rider Yunzi's mind was filled with thoughts on how to rescue Jiezhong Shui. Meow, the pure white kitten meowed and turned its little head left and right to look at the crowd who were all thinking about how to get the armored vehicle and Aryan out. Then, it nudged when Yunzi again. Meow, kitten. Ainafan now. Later, I'll play with you later. Ainafan, who was thinking about rescuing Aryan and casually dealing with the white cat, suddenly heard a voice. It's really a disaster. If possible, can you let me try? This sudden voice woke everyone who was deep in thought. At the same time, they put on a defensive posture as if they had been electrocuted and looked in the direction of the voice. A man and a woman, who were wearing casual clothes and had an outstanding temperament, but looked like tourists who usually appeared in the scenic spots around the city, stood not far away and looked at everyone with a kind smile. At first glance, this man and woman didn't seem to be dangerous. However, the middle-aged man driving the armored vehicle secretly tensed his body. Among all the people present, he was the only one who could feel a trace of threat from the man who was secretly protecting the girl with long pink hair behind him. You are? Einafan, who had amazing observation skills, noticed the subtle changes in the uncle driver, and then quietly stepped forward and asked the man and woman, I'm Ray Minkai. She's Euphemia. We're just tourists who like to travel around the world. We're not bad people. The man had a kind smile and spread out his hands, indicating that he was not a threat. Then, he raised his hand and pointed at the armored vehicle that was stuck in the shop and couldn't move at all. Because I often travel outside, I have some experience with vehicle malfunctions. Why don't you let me try? When the man who claimed to be Ray Minkai stated his intention, everyone was silent. Then, Einafan, Gam, Nina, and the others subconsciously looked at the only military personnel present, the uncle driver. How about it? How about letting me try? If it works, let me and UFFI hitch a ride? The gaze of Einafan, and the others naturally attracted Ray Minkai's attention. Just a ride? For some reason, the uncle driver still couldn't feel at ease with Ray Minkai. As a soldier, the uncle driver saw the abnormality behind Ray Minkai's kind smile at glance. That was a human who wielded terrifying power. There's not much time left. At this moment, World Catacomb Einafan said softly. Yes, there's not much time left. World Catacomb Inafan's voice immediately dispelled the uncle driver's scruples. In the current tense situation, if it continued to drag on, they would probably be left behind in the city. I hope you'd better hurry up. There's not much time left. The only soldier present made way, and World Catacomb Einafan and the others also silently looked at Ray Minkai. However, Einafan suddenly realized that the little white cat that was rubbing against her just now had jumped onto Ray Minkai's shoulder in just a few seconds. This cat is yours. Einafan pointed at the yawning white cat that was lying on Ray Minkai's shoulder in surprise. Yes, its name is State Zero. Ray Minkai nodded and said, that's right. Later, I hope I can enter the armored vehicle alone. There are some unique skills that I don't want to be seen by others. After all, I still have to rely on this unique skill to make a living. As soon as Ray Minkai said this, the uncle driver's face turned black on the spot. However, the uncle driver who subconsciously wanted to refute Ray Minkai chose to compromise in the end. Go. We'll only help you out outside. Thank you. In this way, while the white cat was yawning repeatedly, Ray Minkai, who had boarded the armored vehicle, closed the hatch. It's just a broken car. Why do you still need me to do it? As soon as the hatch was closed, the white cat on Ray Minkai's shoulder whispered softly, do you think you'll be able to get rid of all those junk in the shortest amount of time with your bare hands? Ray Minkai sat in the driver's seat and said as he started the armored vehicle, TSK, you only know how to order me around. When we go back, I can't be short of cherry stones. The white cat opened its mouth and muttered a few words. Then, it jumped down from Ray Minkai's shoulder. In the blink of an eye, it merged with the armored vehicle. To be honest, this was a bit of a waste of talent. The ability to merge with the body was used by Ray Minkai to provide a powerful driving force to clear obstacles for the armored vehicle. It was no wonder that the white cat was unhappy. However, the effect was great. Woo-woo. The familiar and low engine sounded again. The armored vehicle that was stuck by the junk moved back and forth. After a few steps, it retreated out of the destroyed shop. It even abandoned the junk that was stuck in the armored vehicle in the shop. Amidst the dust, Arian and the armored vehicle stopped steadily by the roadside. Wow, it really worked. That's great. I don't want quick. Go and save Sister Shue. Amidst the shouting, Jimizuka Ainawan took a deep look at Ray Minkai, who walked down from the armored vehicle and quickly ran to rescue Jimizuka Shue. Who the hell are you? The middle-aged driver stared at Ray Minkai and frowned. He also tried to rescue the armored vehicle that was stuck by the junk and could not move at all. However, he was unable to succeed. What he did not expect was that the stranger in front of him just walked up, started the engine, and succeeded. Such a simple action inevitably gave the middle-aged driver the illusion that his driving skills were not good enough. It's just some unique skills. Ray Minkai smiled and did not continue to dwell on this issue. The white cat, State Zero, lying on Ray Minkai's shoulder, raised its eyes and glanced at the middle-aged driver. It yawned again and narrowed its eyes. No matter how hard the middle-aged driver thought, he probably would not have thought that the unique skill that Ray Minkai mentioned was the little white cat that was napping on his shoulder at this moment. On the other side, the pair of girls who had been silent since they were brought to the armored vehicle by Jiemizuka Inawan, trying to keep a distance from everyone as much as possible, welcomed a stranger. Hello. This is really an unfortunate day. Under the long pink hair that fluttered in the wind, there was a pair of smiling eyes. I'm Euphemia Libertania. In the face of the unfamiliar girl who took the initiative to talk to her, the petite little girl dressed as a maid, who looked to be only 12 or 13 years old, stepped forward subconsciously. When she stood in front of the taller girl with short brown hair, she was blocked by the latter. The Ram. I'm the Ram. Nice to meet you. This is my sister, Adelizo. The girl with short brown hair smiled and slightly bowed to Euphemia. Hello, the Ram. To be able to meet you on this unfortunate day, it's also a kind of luck. Euphemia nodded and smiled at the girl who claimed to be the Ram, but was actually Princess Isilaram of the Mars Weiss Empire. She then looked at Adelizo, who was still staring at her with a vigilant expression. Hello, Adelizo. I don't mean any harm. I just feel that to be able to meet some trustworthy people on this unfortunate day is a kind of luck. Yes, perhaps today is also my lucky day. Isilaram glanced at Euphemia's deep smile and turned to look at Adelizo. Adelizo, relax. There are no malicious people here. But Prince Adelizo, who had been worried about Isilaram's safety, was stopped by Isilaram's gaze. Mississippi, but it's very dangerous now. No, we're still safe now. Before Adelizo finished speaking, Ray Minkai's voice came from behind. Kai, is it done? Euphemia and Ethelum turned around, and Euphemia asked, What's the matter? It's all done. The heavily damaged body was abandoned just like that. Then, we can finally hitch a ride. The unconscious Jie Zhongshui was placed in the center of the vehicle, and Yehat Song Laojian, who was sitting beside her, shook his head helplessly. Jie Zhongshui's injuries were quite serious, and the first aid kit on the armored vehicle didn't have any suitable medical equipment or medicine to treat Jie Zhongshui's injuries. The only thing that could be done now was to relieve Jie Zhongshui's pain. Yehat Song Laojian, who had dealt with all of this, was secretly glad. If Jie Zhongshui wasn't unconscious, there would be a lot of trouble. However, the matter here was done. The matter on the other side was still being dealt with. Ray Minkai, the man who suddenly appeared and was asked to drive the armored vehicle by the driver uncle, was still shrouded in a fog. The girl who was traveling with him was unexpectedly talking to the foreign girl who was brought over by Jie Zhongshui. They were sitting on the side of the armored vehicle and whispering something. What a strange combination. However, Yehat Song Laojian just shook his head and didn't care about these things. The Martians had already attacked. No matter how strange it was, there was no way to fight for a way out from the crisis in front of one's eyes. However, for a doctor like him, the future was very confusing. Serene was also confused about the future. Serene, who was driving the carrier aircraft, was filled with the anger of revenge for Isilaram. When he dropped the Martian knight Talon's Nalaklas in New Liyuan City, he was surprised to find that the powerful Nalaklas in his memory had died so miserably. There was no room to react at all. It was only for an instant. Even Serene, who was hovering in the air, couldn't see clearly what had happened. All he could see was a huge fireball falling from the sky, and in the blink of an eye, it killed the Nalaklas driven by Talon, who wantonly played with the Earthlings. What on earth happened? Serene's mind was full of doubts, but he couldn't find any explanation. Chapter 438. Captain Knight. Now we have taken control of the Yonglu city that was shot down by the Holy Beast. At night, Ray Minkai, who was standing alone on the top of the teaching building, was receiving news from the Yonglu city that was shot down by the Longfang lion. On the other side of the ocean, Xia Yufeng, one of the Gemini, was talking to Ray Minkai in the Yonglu city. Yes, what about the Martian Knight that controlled the Yonglu city? Ray Minkai naturally trusted the Gemini's ability. After receiving the Gemini's service, Ray Minkai knew that there were many missions that could be handed over to the Gemini to handle, and the results would be satisfactory after the mission was over. We have taken control of it. Our actions were very fast. We rushed to the Martian Knight before he shut down the Yonglu city's power furnace and took control of him. Xia Yufeng's voice was ordinary, as if she was talking about something unrelated. Name? The name of the Martian Knight. Fermion. It's a woman. Xia Yufeng said the name lightly, which surprised Ray Minkai a little. He didn't expect that the Yonglu city that he randomly chose would coincidentally capture the Countess who was piloting the mech that could control the Flying Fist. What a coincidence. In this case, World Catacomb Inasail and the others might not encounter Deucalion's Martian battleship. But thinking back, Ray Minkai felt that nothing was absolute in the world. For example, Ray Minkai and the others were in the school where World Catacomb Inasail and the others studied, and were temporarily resting. Originally, Ray Minkai thought that his intervention caused the premature departure of the Martian Knight, Talon piloted by the Martian Knight, Nalakulas, which would allow World Catacomb Inasail and the others to arrive at the evacuation point in advance and board the evacuation ship that they didn't board at all. But in the end, they returned to their original position in the wheel of history. The road to the evacuation point was blocked by collapsed buildings at some point. If they took a detour to the retreat point, they might not make it in time for the final retreat. Moreover, the redrawn retreat route happened to pass by the school where World Mount Nathan and the others were studying. Therefore, even though Torland and Nero Kalas left prematurely, World Mount Nathan and the others were still able to return to the school and spend the last night that they should have spent in the school. Fermion? I got it. Pay more attention to her condition and don't let her come into contact with anything related to ALD Noah. When will Royd and the others land on Earth? What happened during the day flashed through his mind as Ray Minkai said casually, Earl Royd will land on Earth in an hour. From a message he sent, he seems to be very interested in ALD Noah. Xia Yufeng nodded slowly. At this moment, Ray Minkai suddenly felt that there was some movement in the stairwell that led to the top of the teaching building. Let's call it a day. I will take the initiative to contact you for the rest of the matter. Yes, Captain Knight. Ray Minkai raised his hand, and the communicator in his hand immediately returned to its folded state and slid into Ray Minkai's sleeve. Ray Minkai, who did all this quietly, turned his head and looked at the stairwell, only to find an unexpected figure standing there. World Mount Nathan. Ray Minkai looked at the young face that could be considered paralyzed and couldn't help but be a little surprised. How did this guy come to the door? Under the moonlight, World Mount Nathan's eyes were still clear. He walked step by step toward Ray Minkai, then stood beside Ray Minkai, keeping a distance of about 2 meters from Ray Minkai. World Mount Nathan. Your name is World Mount Nathan. Ray Minkai looked at the distance between World Mount Nathan and himself and asked first. This was a safe distance where they could maintain clear communication. Moreover, World Mount Nathan seemed to have discovered some things that Ray Minkai was hiding. Yes. My name is World Mount Nathan. How do you know? World Mount Nathan nodded, not at all surprised that his name was spoken by a stranger. Ray Minkai, a traveler traveling around the world. Perhaps as a counterattack, World Mount Nathan also said the other party's name like Ray Minkai. Yes. Nice to meet you. World Mount. Ray Minkai smiled slightly and took the initiative to extend his right hand. However, World Mount Nathan did not accept the move, but after staring silently at Ray Minkai's extended right hand for a while, he slowly said, During the day, we encountered an airframe on the way to retreat, an armored cavalry from Mars. Although at that time, I didn't know what kind of power this armored cavalry had. But after it was destroyed by the wreckage that fell from the sky, maybe I understood something. The sudden appearance of the world mound in Nathan and the somewhat inexplicable dialogue made Lei Minkai secretly exclaim in his heart. At the same time, Ray Minkai was also recalling whether he should have made a mistake in principle when choosing the time to appear. Is it that big mech? Speaking of which, it's really scary. UFFI and I had just arrived in this city, but unexpectedly, when we tried to wander in this city, we encountered such a thing in that terrible airframe. Ray Minkai shook his head and said regretfully. It was as if Lei Minkai was really sighing for the trip that had turned out to be so terrible. Yes, a piece of wreckage fell from the sky and destroyed the airframe that seemed to be protected by a screen that could not be penetrated by any attack. This is our luck. After that, World Mound in Nathan nodded slightly, but when he turned around and walked to the stairwell, he suddenly said something that gave Ray Minkai a headache. As someone who grew up in this city, I don't recommend you to travel in this city, because there are no tourist attractions in this city at all, and there are only peripheral industries to serve the military. World Mound in Nathan's casual words made Ray Minkai stunned. But judging from a meaning of World Mound in Nathan, he didn't seem to want to expose Ray Minkai. I'm afraid he is returning a favor. Thinking of this, Ray Minkai smiled bitterly. No wonder he's a genius. Inadvertently, the first contact between Ray Minkai and World Mound in Nathan had ended. The first contact was a failure. Under the pure white moonlight, White Cat State Zero walked leisurely and flashed out from the shadows of the stairwell. After a few leaps, it jumped onto the railing beside Lei Minkai and looked up at the starry sky. No, it's not a failure. I'm just returning a favor. A favor? Perhaps so. But what next? If we continue to stay here, I'm afraid that those guys in the sky won't let us go so easily. After all, their soldiers died inexplicably. Thinking of the Martian airframe that was penetrated by a piece of wreckage peeled off from Yanglu City during the day, White Cat State Zero wanted to laugh. It was the first time it knew that there was such a method to kill people. Even if the airframe had a dimensional screen that could devour everything, in the face of the coverage of the wreckage attack launched by Ray Minkai, the weakness hidden behind, it was like a fluorescent light in the night, extremely conspicuous. At the same time, it also became its own death knell. Don't think about it. This time, it was just a coincidence that I encountered such an opportunity. White Cat State Zero's constantly swinging tail had already exposed its thoughts. In this regard, Ray Minkai unceremoniously discouraged White Cat State Zero from reenacting the previous scene in the future. TCH, White Cat State Zero curled its lips, then raised its right paw and pointed to the starry sky. Then, what do you think we should do? Stay here and get bombed? No, we'll leave tomorrow. We can't stay in this city anymore. Yes, the defeat of Talland and the Laklas was a signal. Whether it was Count Zasbarum, who was secretly controlling Torland, or Count Caludio, who was nominally the ruler of Torland, they would probably take action immediately after receiving the news of Torland's death. They would hunt down and kill the murderer of Torland. Of course, compared to Count Caludio, who had already landed on Earth, Count Zasbarum, who was still in the Earth-Moon orbit, was much more ruthless. Meteor bombardment. I'm afraid, no, the meteor bombardment from the Earth-Moon orbit will inevitably fall on the city. This was not to avenge Talland, but to cover up some things. For example, Zasbarum's secret plan to assassinate Princess Ethelum, as well as evidence. Let's go. State Zero, there's still a battle coming up. I'm afraid I don't need to fight anymore. There seem to be a few broken mechs in the warehouse here. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Ray Minkai's memory and guesses were not wrong. After discovering that his communication with Talland had been cut off, Zasbarum, who had not been in contact for a long time, finally received news of Talland's death from his good friend Caludio. What? Talland was killed? How is that possible? The Earth's armored cavalry could actually shoot down the Laklas? When the news of Talland's death reached Zasbarum's ears, He even thought it was a joke. Coludio. What happened? How could Talon die so easily? Talon's identity was not simple. Before he became Coludio's retainer, he stayed by Zasbrum's side and served Coludio. However, by chance, Talon was recommended by Zasbrum to Coludio's side. He changed his identity and became one of Coludio's knight. Coludio did not say anything. He just silently sent a photo and video taken from a high altitude to Zasbrum. This is my retainer, slain Troyad, who witnessed the whole process. Although Talon's sacrifice was honorable, I personally think that Talon's death was not worth it. Is this the wreckage of a building? Looking at the familiar color in the photo and the vaguely familiar silhouette, Zerebrum suddenly thought of a possibility. Coludio. Fermian's Yonglu city is missing. This time, it was Coludio's turn to be surprised. During the Orbital Knight's first attack on Earth, Fermian followed Coludio and landed her Yonglu city. Originally, Coludio only thought that Fermian's Yonglu city had some malfunctions during the landing process, which caused them to not be able to contact Fermian. He did not expect to hear this shocking news from Zasbrum. Missing? We can't contact her at all. Coludio frowned. No, we've tried everything. We still can't contact Fermian or even her Yonglu city. I'm afraid that during the landing process, she was ambushed by the enemy. Zasbrum's words made Coludio go silent. Although Zasbrum did not directly state what he meant, Coludio had already guessed some of it. The Earth Alliance army probably planned everything and made some preparations to target the Orbital Knight's Yonglu city before the Orbital Knight. No, even before Princess Ethelum's visit. If that was the case, the Earth Alliance army might have already made some achievements. However, how great were the results achieved by the Earth Alliance army? Coludio, what should we do? Let's not talk about where Fermian's Yonglu city went. The city where Talon died is in your territory. Zasbrum seemed to remind Coludio out of goodwill. I know. Don't worry. Zasbrum, Talon was the capable retainer you recommended to me. I won't forget his sacrifice, and I won't forget the murderer who made him sacrifice himself. After that, Coludio closed the communication with Zasbrum, then turned around and looked behind him. The earthling that he loathed, Serene Talot, was standing there quietly, waiting for him to deal with him. Serene, who respectfully bowed his head, was very polite, but for some reason, every time Coludio saw Serene, anger would rise in his heart. Whoosh! The wind blew, and the scepter in Coludio's hand slammed into Serene's body. Ugh! Serene, who was in pain, couldn't help but groan. Get lost. Thor's sacrifice is Guanrong's, but your desertion is shameful. Now, go to Neku immediately and attack with Brant. If you don't find the murderer who killed Talon, you don't have to come back. Yes, sir. Count Coludio. Serene, who was enduring the severe pain, walked out of the bridge with difficulty, gritted his teeth, and walked toward Neku. Oof. Shameful earthling. Coludio's expression was ugly, but he had no other way to get rid of the fog in front of him. Chapter 439. The night passed. Jiezhong Shui, who woke up from her coma, learned the ins and outs of the matter from Jiezhong Ainafan and Yehatsong Laijin. Therefore, after treating her injuries, she also thanked Ray Mingkai and Euphemia for helping them before. You're welcome. Warrant Officer Jiezhong. Ray Mingkai waved his hand, indicating that it was just a small matter. Compared to this, I want to know, is there any other way for us to leave this city besides evacuating from the evacuation point? Ray Mingkai's question was understandable. Jiezhong Shui was silent for a moment, then told him what she knew. I know everything. If we rush to the evacuation point now, I'm afraid it's too late. But we may have another way. In New Luyuan City, there's a military base. Presumably, before the citizens evacuate, there should be other people in this base who will stay until the last moment. Captain Juhu, Net Rider Yunzi, who was waiting on the side, exclaimed, Captain Juhu? Upon hearing this name, Jiezhong Shui suddenly shook her head, and Ray Mingkai also had some confidence in his heart. It seems that the only way to evacuate from this city should be in the hands of the drunkard Captain Juhu. Although I don't know what kind of person Captain Juhu is, at least we should try to contact the military base now. Of course, this is just my personal suggestion. What to do depends on the arrangement of Warrant Officer Jie Zhong. After Ray Mingkai made a suggestion, he handed the decision back to Jie Zhong Shui. In advance, this was what everyone hoped for. After all, other than the armored vehicle driver uncle, only Jie Zhong Shui, the Warrant Officer of the Earth Alliance Army, could give everyone the confidence to leave this city. Jie Zhong Shui did not immediately reply, but after a moment of silence, she looked at her brother. "I'm a fan. I remember that the school should be equipped with a signal flare. Can you give it to me?" Jie Zhong Shui nodded, then turned around to get the signal flare that Jie Zhong Shui wanted. "Everyone, I have a way to contact the reinforcement from the base, but to be honest, I don't have much confidence." Jie Zhong Shui's words made Dr. Yihilai Tsongjun, who was watching from the side, scratch the back of his head. In other words, we have to be prepared? Should we wait for reinforcements or evacuate the city on our own? Yes, that was it. Mr. Ray Mingkai, I remember that you have driven an armored vehicle before, right? Jie Zhong Shui nodded. While expressing that he had no objection to Yi Ge Lai Tsong's words, he looked at Ray Mingkai. "Do you want me to prepare a vehicle that can take everyone away?" Ray Mingkai naturally guessed Jie Zhong Shui's intentions. However, he had no idea what kind of transportation there was in the school. The only thing he knew were the 3 training machines used by the students and the heavy trucks used for daily maintenance and transportation of the machines. "Yes. May I trouble you? For myself and for others, I'll take this job. However, was it possible to take away everyone's vehicles? Except for the armored vehicle." As he spoke, Lei Mingkai added another sentence. "Of course. Before that, I'm looking forward to the arrival of the reinforcements from a base." Time was of the essence. After Jiezhong Ainafan sent over the signal gun they found, Jiezhong Shui immediately picked up the already loaded signal gun and went to the school's field. She neatly shot out 3 red signal flares into the sky. Although it's a bit reckless, it's easier for the base to send reinforcements by sending red signal flares that represent battle. Jie Zhongshui helplessly smiled and explained to the somewhat stupefied Wang Wenyunzi and the others. No matter what, as the signal flares rose into the sky, all that was left was to wait. The second floor of the teaching building. Standing in the aisle and looking at Jie Zhongshui and the others on the field, Euphemia looked around and confirmed that no one was around. "Kai, will there be reinforcements?" Euphemia already knew about the White Cat State Zero speculation about the enemy's upcoming action. Therefore, she was also worried that the citizens who followed Jie Zhongshui and the others might be involved in the meteor bombing. "They will. Don't worry." Ray Mingkai nodded, then raised his hand and pointed to the other side of the school. "Look, aren't they here? It seems that the base is also waiting for the signal here. UFFI, let's go." Okay. The process of evacuation was very smooth. Torland, who was killed in advance, could no longer have any impact on the retreat of Jie Zhongshui, Ainafan, and the others. Perhaps even the meteor bombardment that Nafan and the others had narrowly dodged wouldn't be able to leave any bad impression in their memories, right? Moreover, in the boarding ship that came to the rescue in time, Ray Mingkai also had a person that he was very interested in. Juhu Koichiro. This man, who was affected by the battle injuries in the past and could not even pick up a weapon until now, and could not even enter the cockpit of the armored cavalry to fight, had another eye-catching talent. Lambda drive system? This wasn't something that made people feel good about themselves. Kai, when he saw Juhu Koichiro, the white cat lying on Ray Mingkai's shoulder, had already guessed Ray Mingkai's meaning. Lambda drive system. This device that generated power according to the emotional fluctuations of the pilot was almost harsh on the pilot. At the same time, it also allowed the amalgam to constantly screen suitable pilots through a certain standard all over the world. And Yubei Koichiro's current state may be somewhere between these standards. In other words, as long as he was guided well, perhaps Juhu Koichiro a man who was deeply affected by the battle injuries in the past, could become an outstanding pilot with a lambda drive system. So, what do you want to do? Do you want to run over now and say that you can cure his psychological illness? While everyone was busy finding a place to settle down on the boarding ship, the white cat kept whispering in Rei Minkai's ear. How is that possible? If you walk over like this, I'm afraid you'll be beaten. Maybe you'll even be caught. Rei Minkai shook his head and denied the white cat's words. What's more, Juhu Koichiro's past is not something that ordinary people can know. Let's talk about it later. Now is not the right time to contact Juhu Koichiro. With the development of the matter, Juhu Koichiro, who wanted to change the status quo and was unwilling to accept the protection of the teenagers, would inevitably have the opportunity to contact Rei Minkai. At that time, facing the power that he had lost, and facing the nightmare that still haunted him, Juhu Koichiro was likely to agree to Rei Minkai's conditions. It's really despicable. You scheme against others like this. Can you still be considered a knight? The white cat made a disdainful sound of contempt. Rei Minkai rolled his eyes and said indifferently, "That's right. When did I say I was a knight?" That was the end of his observation of Juhu Koichiro. Although Rei Minkai was looking forward to Juhu Koichiro's performance when he boarded the body equipped with a lambda drive system, now was not a good time. "Kai, come here." At this moment, Euphemia's anxious voice came from outside. At the same time, Rei Minkai heard a roar that resounded through the sky. Meteorite bombardment. Reality once again overturned Rei Minkai's hypothesis. The meteorite bombardment that should not have happened. Moreover, at the same time that the landing craft successfully withdrew from the city, a terrifying number of meteorites that could destroy a city in an instant fell from the sky and erased New Lahara from the map. Faced with this terrible scene, Rei Minkai sighed helplessly. In the end, we still can't avoid it. Even if Torlin was killed by Rei Minkai first, Count Zasbrum, who was hiding behind it, still took decisive actions that were enough to erase all evidence. Thinking of this, Rei Minkai moved away from the mushroom cloud that rose into the sky and landed on the girl who was standing aside and looking at the huge mushroom cloud in the sky. The girl whose real name was Athylam Visser Iliasia. She was the first princess of the Weiss Empire, but her expression didn't reveal any meaning. What's more, at this moment, Athylam did not expose her true identity to anyone. On this landing craft, other than Edel Lizo, only Rei Minkai and Euphemia knew her true identity. As for Enabane, they still thought that Athylam was just a girl from afar. Damn Martians! They destroyed our city. Facing the destruction of the city where they lived since childhood, the teenagers cursed fiercely, which made Athylam feel a little uncomfortable. This is something that can't be helped. After all, it's already a state of war. Euphemia's voice sounded at the right time, making Athylam's attention involuntarily move to Euphemia's gentle eyes that seemed to be able to see through everything. A state of war? Athylam was silent for a moment, but then she nodded slowly. That's right, this is already a state of war. But we may have a way to stop this war from continuing. Join the army? Maybe this is a good idea, but I don't recommend you do it. Euphemia shook her head and denied a possibility. No, Athylam was about to say something, but she stopped. Princess Edel Lizo, who was standing behind, was worried that Athylam would say something that shouldn't be said in a moment of desperation. If he were to reveal his true identity after witnessing a city being bombarded by a Martian knight with meteorites, it would probably lead to some terrifying changes. No, Edel Lizo, don't worry. I'm not that reckless yet. Athylam turned her head and looked at Edel Lizo with a smile, comforting the maid who followed her. Is that so? Please, Your Highness. Miss, please pay more attention. While Adelizo heaved a sigh of relief, he reminded Linley again and again. I know. Athylam turned her head again and looked at Euphemia. For some reason, Athylam always had a feeling that her disguise would be seen through by the girl in front of her. Moreover, in terms of aura, Athylam seemed to be looking at her grandfather, Emperor Weiss. No, it should be said that she was stronger and more dazzling than her grandfather, Emperor Weiss Regalia Weislabas. Your Majesty. That was the name that appeared in Ethylem's heart in an instant. Is this an illusion? Ethylem didn't know, but Euphemia's eyes that seemed to be able to see through her were real. Why? If it's windy here, Ethylem, you can go back and rest first. The road ahead may be very long. Ethylem's silence didn't make Euphemia angry. Instead, she gently reminded her before turning around and returning to Ray Minkai's side. In order to prevent Ethylem from catching a cold and to prevent her from continuing to stay in this dangerous place, Edel Lizo bravely pulled Ethylem back to the landing ship after Euphemia left. Lei Minkai couldn't help but let out a wry smile as he looked at the little girl who was trying her best to hold back her blushing face. UFFI, are you making things difficult for her? I didn't do anything. We were just exchanging views on the future situation. Euphemia shook her head and looked at the boys and girls who were wandering around the 3 training machines that Neku pulled out from the school. They will probably be involved in the upcoming war, right? Yes, if nothing unexpected happens. Except for these training machines, this ship doesn't have much defensive power. What's more, the enemy won't let us evacuate here easily. The landing ship finally sailed slowly into the predetermined rendezvous point under the cover of the night. Waiting for them here was another landing ship with complete combat power. Darzana Makbaliji heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that Ariane had set up a guard around her. Her previous actions could be said to be bold. As the captain of the assault landing ship, he actually handed over the command of the assault landing ship to his deputy at the crucial moment of the evacuation and turned to join a support team that might possibly be completely wiped out and began to rescue Jie Zhong Shui, Jie Zhong, Ainafan, and the others. The result of this bold action was that after meeting with her own troops, she couldn't get the exact coordinates of her landing ship. The only thing she could do now was to speed up the supply and evacuation operations. She had to complete all the evacuation operations before the enemy attacked. But the enemy was here, standing on the deck. Ray Minkai, who was watching Darzana communicate with his subordinates, raised his head and looked to the other side. The Mars armored cavalry that used plasma blades was here. Chapter 440. The sound of gunfire, the roaring artillery shells, and the flashes of fire that flashed back and forth between the many containers and the port building became the factor that affected everyone's heartbeat at this moment. The attack of the Mars Koras cavalry did not surprise Darzana. On the contrary, the attack of the Mars Koras cavalry made Darzana slightly relieved. However, this was only just a little. Although due to the attack of the Mars Koras cavalry, the enemy would probably not launch the previous terrible meteor bombardment, but due to the powerful individual strength of the Mars Koras cavalry, even if Darzana received the support of the first ship sent by her adjutant and the Appaloosa team that came along with the ship, she still could not feel at ease, especially in this anxious battle in front of her, Ariane. Whether this type of Koras cavalry that was developed by the Earth Alliance Army could achieve the mission given at the beginning of the development could only depend on the current situation. The 50mm submachine gun equipped by Ariane madly poured out its own ammunition. The Appaloosa team piloting Ariane also followed the tactical formation developed by the Koras cavalry to block the attack of the Mars Koras cavalry. In the flames that lit up half of the night sky, the Appaloosa team steadily moved forward and narrowed the distance with the Mars Koras cavalry step by step. From this situation, perhaps the victory of the Appaloosa team was only a matter of time. However, Ray Minkai did not think so. The roaring gunfire made many people who temporarily went ashore to take a breather when the landing ship docked to return to the landing ship in panic, trembling as they listened to the continuous gunfire. Do you want to go? Kai. Looking at the panicked people scrambling to return to the landing ship, Euphemia turned her head slightly and looked at Ray Minkai standing beside her. And, relying on the strength of these people alone, it is impossible to defeat the Mars Koras aerial. Ray Minkai raised his right hand and placed it on the railing, looking at the night sky that was torn by gunfire and flames. But, now you Euphemia hesitated for a moment, looked around, but did not say the second half of the sentence. Whether it was Lancelot, Raging Flame Demon Sword, or even Long Fong Lion, they would not give these three mecha a chance to fight. If Rei Minkai hastily allowed these three mechs to appear on the battlefield, he was afraid that it would lead to complications that he did not want to see. What's so difficult about it? Don't they have a mecha body over there? It's just that I have to hurry up. Rei Minkai chuckled. Then, he exerted force with his right hand and easily flipped over the railing. After a few leaps, he landed on the empty ground. Mr. Rei Minkai, please do not act on your own. It's very dangerous now. When Yunzi, who was moving the remaining supplies onto the landing ship, happened to see the scene of Rei Minkai jumping off the landing ship. However, Rei Minkai simply waved his hand in response to Netrite Yunzi's call, telling her not to worry. Not good. Mr. Rei Minkai seemed to have run to the battle zone. Should we tell Sister Shui about the situation? Realizing that Rei Minkai did not respond to her call, when Yunzi quickly pulled Jiamao and Nathan, who was standing on the side. However, Jiamao and Nathan's reaction surprised when Yunzi. No, Yunzi, don't worry about Mr. Rei Minkai's safety. While saying this, Jiamao and Nathan looked up at the deck of the landing ship. Coincidentally, Euphemia also looked over here. Moreover, Euphemia even smiled and nodded at Jiamao and Nathan. See, Yunzi, his girlfriend is not worried, so we don't need to worry about Mr. Rei Minkai's safety. The rational Jiamao and Nathan saw that Rei Minkai and Euphemia had confidence that ordinary people could not understand at a glance. Therefore, in the face of when Yunzi's concerned, Jiamao and Nathan believed in her own judgment. But, the corner of when Yunzi's mouth twitched a few times, but there was no better way. In the end, she returned to the landing ship with the last supplies and waited for the evacuation. The roar of gunfire was getting closer and closer, and the breeze blowing from the mountain gradually carried a trace of smoke unique to gunpowder. The panic also became stronger and stronger as the smell of gunpowder spread, causing the pressure on the people staying in the landing ship to become heavier and heavier. It was as if the moment Ariel appeared in front of the landing ship in the next moment, these people who were involved in the sudden war would probably collapse on the spot. Princess Adele Lizo, who was guarding beside Islam, suddenly found that her Royal Highness, the princess he was guarding, stood up without warning. Looking at her, it seemed that she wanted to walk out of the cabin and onto the deck. Don't worry, Adele Lizo, I'm just going out for a while. After Islam showed a smile that made Adele Lizo feel at ease, she walked towards the deck where only Euphemia was left. Why don't you go back to the cabin to take refuge? Facing the increasingly suffocating breeze of gunpowder, Islam came to Euphemia's side and looked at Euphemia. Why? Because it's dangerous here? Euphemia's pink hair fluttered gently, and the smile on her face was not affected by the gunshots that were getting closer and closer. The girls standing on the deck did not seem to be frightened by the close battle from beginning to end. Moreover, in Islam's eyes, the light in the eyes of the girl named Euphemia in front of her was the radiance of confidence, and also trust. Although Islam was in the cabin just now, she subconsciously chose a good angle to be able to pay attention to the position of the deck at all times. The communication between Rei Minkai and Euphemia. And Rei Minkai's leap was all seen by Islam. Islam even felt that the other party had noticed her gaze from the beginning, but she did not point it out. It's dangerous. The Earth's Koras cavalry is no match for the Mars Koras cavalry. Islam took a deep breath and said a very cruel reality. At least not now. Euphemia did not deny Islam's words, but she still stood on the deck and had no intention of returning to the cabin. Islam's gaze fell on Euphemia's delicate face, and she couldn't help but recall the feeling she felt before and the name that emerged from her heart involuntarily. You seem to trust that person a lot. The words in her heart circled around Islam's mouth a few times, but in the end, it became this sentence. Boom! As soon as Islam finished speaking, the violent explosion of an Arion being slashed by Errol swept across the deck. Facing the strong wind mixed with the strong sound of gunpowder, Euphemia smiled slightly and said, "Because Guy is my night guardian." Night. This title may be an adjective representing a love interest for the girls on Earth, but for Islam, who was born in the Weiss Empire, it had a different meaning. Powerful, loyal, adjectives such as trust, in Islam's memory, were adjectives for the knight who was loyal to the Weiss Empire and the Weiss royal family. Now, when Euphemia said those words, Ithelium felt that there was something unusual about it. However, before Islam could say another word, a white wing flew in front of her eyes. The next second, when her vision became clear again, Islam found that Euphemia, who was standing beside her, had jumped from the deck to the open space below. "Miss Euphemia." "Islam. Now, I have to go back and support my knights. See you later." After Euphemia waved at Islam, she chased after Ray Minkai all the way. That resolute and courageous figure gave rise to a strange feeling in Ethelam's heart. While Euphemia and Islam were talking, Ray Minkai ran all the way to the area where the Appaloosa squad and Arul were fighting. However, due to the fierce battle between the two sides, Ray Minkai did not dare to take the risk of being hit by a stray bullet to intervene in the battle. TSK. What a boring battle. White Cat Zero, who had been lying on Ray Minkai's shoulder from beginning to end, yawned. Unexpectedly, Ray Minkai grabbed it by the back of its neck and lifted it in front of his eyes. "It's time for you to enter the stage. Go and save one of the airframes." Ray Minkai's words made White Cat Zero suddenly widen its eyes. "Are you serious? Those airframes are even worse than the crossbow you've driven before. Why do you want me to save them? If you don't save one of them, do you want Lancelot or the Raging Flame Demon Sword? Or do you want to transform into Lion Zero and enter the stage?" Ray Minkai suddenly choked White Cat Zero. "Even if that's the case, there's no need for me to save these airframes, right?" Faced with the situation that needed to be kept secret for the time being, the reluctant White Cat Zero still muttered as it jumped off Ray Minkai's shoulder. After a few jumps, it disappeared in the battle between the Appaloosa squad and Arul. And the two sides of the battle were unaware of this scene. Hey, lowly people who only know how to rely on long-range weapons. You really don't know how to appreciate elegance. Arul. Among the Mars armored cavalry who used the plasma beam sword, the Mars knight named Bullet had a confident and playful smile as he looked at the Appaloosa squad, which only had 2 Arul airframes left. The blazing plasma beam sword could melt and explode all the shells fired by Arul, making it impossible for Arul to attack him. It could be said that the moment Arul pulled out the plasma beam sword, Arul in front of Bullet could be declared dead. The roaring gunshots came to an abrupt end. The 50mm machine gun's magazine was emptied. This was an opportunity to end the battle that was undoubtedly a farce in Bullet's eyes. "Draw the sword." Bullet shouted a slogan in a deep voice. The plasma beam sword in Arul's hand suddenly increased by 3 points. In the next second, the blazing plasma beam sword slashed at Arion, who had retreated to a dead end in a panic, with the force of Mount Tai pressing down on him. A deadly light arc flashed in the air. Boom! Amid the ear-piercing explosion, Bullet did not feel that Arul had hit the target. In the rapidly dissipating smoke and dust, Arul, who should have been cut into pieces, narrowly avoided the slash of the plasma beam sword. However, in the heat wave explosion caused by the plasma beam sword, he was slammed into the building and lost all reaction, falling into a dead silence. He was lucky enough to avoid Arul's slash, but this is not bad. Although the armored cavalry made by the lowly earthlings is not worth mentioning, perhaps it can be used as a trophy for Count Caludio. With a slight glance, the Mars Knight Bullet looked at Arul, who was still in good condition, and another plan arose in his mind. Before that, let's clean this place up first. Therefore, Bullet, who turned around and continued to chase the remaining Arul, did not notice that in the shadow of the building, a figure was quickly rushing out and jumping near Arul's cockpit. "Well done." Ray Minkai praised the White Cat's achievement as he moved the unconscious Earth Coalition Army pilot out of Arul's cockpit. It's just a piece of cake. That big guy is really stupid. He was so easily fooled by me. The White Cat, who was squatting next to the cockpit, wagged its tail proudly and looked at Arul with disdain. He's just a madman who uses his strength to bully ordinary people. Ray Minkai, who was sitting in Arul's cockpit, started up Arul's system while talking about his evaluation of the Mars night. The White Cat, State Zero, jumped onto Ray Minkai's shoulder as the cockpit closed. TSK, this cockpit is really narrow. How did the technicians in this world design it? Also, the field of view is not good. When Ray Minkai tried to start up Arul, the self-proclaimed knowledgeable White Cat, State Zero, kept pointing at Arul's cockpit. Shut up, State Zero. If you do this again, believe it or not, I'll make you fuse with this Arul. As soon as he said this, the fine fur on the White Cat's body suddenly stood up. No, absolutely not. You don't have to drive this body. The White Cat, who despised Arul, immediately shut its mouth and continued to be an onlooker. Check the voltage, oil pressure, temperature, rotation number normal. Well, the steps to start up Earth's Iron Cavalry are indeed a bit complicated. However, the authority's general driving technology is really useful. After some operation, Ray Minkai finally started up Arul in the shortest time possible. As the engine roared louder and louder, Arul's stabilizer wings were immediately lowered. Arul, which was being driven by Ray Minkai, quickly flew past the battlefield that was engulfed in flames. Arul did not go far. Or rather, after killing the last Arul, Arul's current posture was like taking a leisurely stroll. He walked step by step towards the landing craft that had lost all its defensive power. In Bullit's eyes, the two landing craft were undoubtedly helpless lambs without any power to protect themselves. Earthling, let's stop here. The roar of the plasma beam soared tore through the night sky. The ear-piercing roar was like a death sentence. However, before Arul could swing his sword, the gunshots that should have stopped sounded again. What? Arul quickly turned around and waved his plasma beam sword to block the sudden attack. However, Bullet's expression was not very good. Earthling, how dare you fool me? Unforgivable. Die. Without a doubt, Bullet had already guessed where the sudden attack came from. Unforgivable? You sure talk big. Mr. Knight from Mars. Surprises came one after another. What Bullet did not expect was that the other party's communication could infiltrate his Iron Cavalry. You, lowly barbarian, die. Arul's plasma beam sword tore through the night sky and slashed straight at Arul. In the end, Arian easily dodged it. What? Your movement changed? Who are you? Brand was arrogant and conceited when facing Earthlings. However, this did not mean that he was narrow-minded. The movements displayed by Arul in front of him were not the movements of the Earth's joint military pilots that he easily crushed before. Who am I? Mr. Knight from Mars. Do you know? A person who only knows how to wave his sword at the weak is nothing more than a fanatic. Chapter 441. Fanatic. The plasma beam sword that melted all the surrounding containers couldn't hit Arion, whose movements became more and more strange. This made Bullet even angrier, and he was dragged into an uncontrollable abyss by Ray Minkai's words. Fanatic. The Knight's beliefs that were regarded as incomparably honorable and important by Brand and even his colleagues, and they even regarded themselves as nobler and more outstanding than Earthlings, were actually humiliated by Ray Minkai's use of this word. The plasma beam sword became a channel for Bullet to vent his anger at this moment. Under his control, the plasma beam sword in Arui's hand slashed out a series of light arcs that seemed to connect into one. The light arcs covered the head of Arui, who was piloted by Ray Minkai with an earth-shattering momentum. It was as if Arui would not stop until he was dead. But in Bullet's eyes, The blade that would inevitably tear Arion in front of him into pieces became completely useless under the effect of Arion's seemingly cumbersome but unusually light stabilizer wings. Every time the plasma beam sword slashed down, it was easily dodged by Arion, who fully drove the stabilizer wings on both sides. At this moment, Arion was as light as a butterfly among flowers. Not to mention Bullet, even Darzana, Juhu Koichiro, and Gaizuki Yuki, who were part of the Earth Alliance army, were dumbfounded. When did Arion's maneuverability become so good? Juhu Koichiro and Gaizuki Yuki, who personally piloted Arion, looked at each other subconsciously, and their faces were full of disbelief. Compared to Arion, who was fighting with Ari, the Arion they piloted was like a toddler who had just learned to walk. The stabilizer wings are actually used like this. Looking at Arion, who was playing with the stabilizer wings under Rei Minkai's piloting, Gaizuki Yuki didn't know how to express her emotions at this moment. Major Nakabayashi, who was piloting Arion, Darzana, who was also shocked by Arion's strange performance, quickly picked up the microphone and contacted the number 1 spaceship parked next to her. Yes, Captain Mark Balaji, from the identification signal, is Appaloosa 33. However, it was a pity. The Appaloosa 33 pilots aren't that good. Although Major Nakabayashi wanted to admit that Arrowwing, who was fighting Erol, was piloted by one of his own pilots, he regretfully admitted that the one piloting the Appaloosa 33 was not one of his men. Really? I got it. Although Darzana was surprised, she quickly calmed down. Captain Juhu, Warrant Officer Jiamound, the one piloting the Arion, is not one of our men. What? Juhu Koichiro and Jiatsuka Snow were shocked. Darnazer's next words made Jie Zhongxue fall into deep thought. Captain Juhu, Warrant Officer Jiamound, in your impression, are there any special citizens on this ship? A special citizen? In an instant, Jie Zhongshue's pupil shrank. Obviously, she already had a target in mind. Could it be him? Buzz. Under the plasma beam sword, whether it was the containers or the buildings, they all turned into hot lava flowing on the ground, but it still couldn't hit Arion. Rei Minkai had a confident smile on his face, his hands holding the side, stick coordinated with the rhythm of his feet, allowing the thrust generated by Arion's stabilizer to perfectly push the entire body's movement rhythm. Sometimes left, sometimes right. The ghostly Arion almost made Bielan's head explode. Why? Why? Arui loyally swung the plasma sword in his hand according to his master's will, but his master was deeply irritated by the fact that his attacks missed again and again. Why? Why didn't I hit him? In Bielan's view, his attack was perfect. In the past battles, as long as he confidently shouted the slogan of drawing the sword, Arul's blade would definitely cut the enemy into pieces. This was the source of Bielan's confidence. It was also the foundation of Arul's strength. However, this confidence, this strength was not worth mentioning in front of Arion. The air was still hot. The plasma beam sword was still unstoppable. However, Arion, who should have been torn to pieces by the blade, was still moving back and forth nimbly under the light arc of the blade. What a pitiful god! White Cat State Zero slightly opened its eyes and sneered. Pitiful? Probably. The stabilizing wings between Arrowwing's legs retracted, and the steel giant, which was originally floating on the ground, suddenly sank. As it landed heavily on the ground, Lei Minkai had Arrowwing get into a squat position, narrowly avoiding Arul's horizontal slash. Then, Arion raised the 50mm submachine gun in his hand without hesitation and shot wildly at Arion's right wrist holding the plasma beam sword. Da-da-da! From a moment the first gunshot rang out, Rei Minkai's finger on the trigger did not relax until the 50mm submachine gun in Arion's hand madly emptied all the ammunition in the magazine. The heat bullets used by the 50mm submachine gun made a series of dense drum beats on Erui's right wrist, catching Brand off guard. He couldn't react in time to the sudden attack on his right wrist. He could only watch as his beloved machine, Rui, was blasted by the 50mm submachine gun. His right hand, which was holding the plasma beam sword, cracked under the roar of the 50-millimeter submachine gun. As the cracks grew bigger and bigger in the violent explosion, the anger in Bulent's heart grew stronger. It was too ugly. It was too ugly. As a glorious knight of Mars, he was forced to this extent by a lowly earthling. This was simply throwing the pride in Bulent's heart to the ground and trampling on it crazily. Unforgivable. Unforgivable. In the midst of Bulent's angry roar, Arion stretched out his left hand and pulled out the other plasma beam, sword hidden at his waist. Then he aimed it at Arion's waist like a bolt of lightning. As long as this attack hit, Arion would definitely be destroyed by Arion. However, in fact, there was no if. Ray Minkai, who had some understanding of Arion, had been guarding against Arion's dual sword mode from the beginning. Therefore, Ray Minkai's strategy was very simple. It was to destroy one of Arion's plasma beam swords as much as possible before Arion used his dual sword mode. In this way, the pressure on Arion and even Ray Minkai would be reduced by a lot. In the rushing arc of light, Arion once again relied on the powerful force of the stabilizer wings to escape from danger in time. He also quickly changed the magazine of the 50-millimeter submachine gun. Is it the last magazine? After a fierce battle, the remaining ammunition was almost used up. The only thing left was the magazine that had just been reloaded. Kai, do you want to run? White Cat Zero smiled slightly. How was that possible? Ray Minkai rejected White Cat Zero's suggestion without thinking. Arion's dual sword mode was difficult to deal with and terrifying, but Ray Minkai already had victory in his hands. In the attack, just now, although Arion's right wrist was not shattered by Arion's attack, it left an extremely serious injury. As long as he attacked Arion's right wrist again, obviously, the other party had also noticed this. Arion, who was waving the plasma beam sword with both hands, launched a storm-like attack. With wave after wave of attacks, he quickly compressed Arion's space of movement and forced Arion to a dead end step by step. Buzz! Under Arion's wave, the unceasing, roaring plasma beam burned everything it could touch until it destroyed Arion, whom Bulent hated and resented. Da-da-da. At this moment, the gunshots caused by Arion shocked Bulent. It was burst shooting. This was different from the crazy, continuous shooting from before. The opportunity for burst shooting, apart from a few other factors, was probably the only factor that Bulent had imagined. Arion had run out of ammunition. What would happen to a gun after it ran out of ammunition? Bulent was naturally very clear about this. Die, despicable earthling. Bulent, who felt that he had grasped the opportunity, unreservedly increased the output of Arion's LD Noah furnace to the limit. He hoped that he could instantly kill Arion, who made him spend more effort to deal with this war zone that he hated. Boom! Boom! The plasma beam sword slashed down rapidly, destroying the objects around Arion again and again. Da-da-da-da. Facing the violent attack, Ray Minkai's expression was extremely calm, as if he was not frightened by the terrifying attack in front of him. In fact, Ray Minkai's gaze had even caught a glimpse of an opportunity amidst Arui's unending dual sword attacks. It was the right hand that had been scarred by Arion, couldn't keep up with the rhythm of the left hand that was still intact. Even if Bulent deliberately hid this point, Ray Minkai still saw the opportunity. Opportunity! The 50-millimeter submachine gun's gunshots paused, but the moment the hour hand reached the next second, the 50-millimeter submachine gun burst out with a final roar. Da-da-da-da. The moment the trigger was tightly pulled, the remaining ammunition in the 50-millimeter submachine gun's magazine was quickly consumed. As the shells fell to the ground, the destructive shells whizzed past Arui's sword light, accurately and fatally striking Arui's right wrist. Boom! 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 Arion, who couldn't retract his sword in time, was submerged by the storm of shells shot by the 50-millimeter submachine gun. Flames, explosions. There was also a harsh warning sound that swept through the area, tearing Bulent's thoughts to shreds. Earthling! When his right hand exploded and the plasma beam sword fell to the ground, Bullet, driven by his anger, instinctively controlled Arul to swing the plasma beam sword in his left hand and thrust it straight at Arul, who had rushed him while Arul's right wrist was blown up. Bullet put on a resolute look that said, "Either you die or I live." However, before the plasma beam sword in Arion's left hand could stab Arion, a sudden black shadow suddenly rushed out from the edge of Bulent's left eye's field of vision. Under Bulent's gaze, the shadow drew a beautiful arc in the air and heavily hit Arion's left arm. Boom! The sudden appearance of the black shadow had a powerful impact, causing an ear-piercing boom to erupt and causing Ares' thrust to deviate. The stab that should have been able to stab Arion, but under the influence of the shadow, it deviated to the right and completely lost its accuracy. "What?" Bulent's shocked voice sounded. Under the shadow that knocked Arion's left hand askew, Arion's figure rushed out like lightning and appeared in front of Bulent. Boom! There was a loud noise. There was a violent tremor. The screen in front of Bulent's eyes shook. "Move! Move! Why aren't you moving? Arion!" What did the shaking screen mean? Bulent knew, but he didn't want to know, because this meant that his own personal machine, Arion, had fallen into the control of the other party. His right hand was destroyed, and his left hand had inexplicably malfunctioned. Now, Arion had lost all combat power and was a fish on the chopping block. Didn't I say it before? People who only know how to use weapons in their hands to bully the weak are just fanatics who believe in power. As Rei Minkai's voice sounded, Arion raised his left hand and firmly grabbed Arion's head. "No, don't come over. We, the Martian Knight, will never lose." "Oomph, is that so?" Rei Minkai smiled indifferently. "Then let's wait and see. But before you leave, I'll give you a gift." With a flash of cold light, a tactical dagger appeared in Arion's hand. I remember that's what you said before." Rei Minkai thought for a moment, and then the corners of his mouth curled up. Drawl, as soon as his voice fell, the tactical dagger in Arion's hand went straight into Arion's cockpit. PFFF. The tumbling waves made it almost impossible for Brand to speak a complete sentence. Until the end, Bulent couldn't believe the fact that Arion would lose to the armored cavalry of the Earth Alliance army. How is this possible? Clang. When the tactical dagger was drawn out, Arion, who had lost his power, fell powerlessly at Arion's feet. "Win. We won." Yubei Koichiro's eyes widened. He didn't expect such an amazing reversal in the one-sided battle. "We won." The moment Arion fell, there was a burst of cheers in the landing ship. This was the sound of joy of escaping death. Among the crowd, Ethelum's eyes were always on the figure standing in front of Arion, who seemed to be talking to the person sitting inside. "Euphemia, your majesty." Thinking of this, Ethelum's eyes subconsciously moved to Arion. "Knight, guardian knight?" Chapter 442. Rei Minkai, a traveler who claimed to be traveling around the world. However, the ability he displayed had already exceeded the technical level of ordinary travelers. From Jiezhong Shui, Darzana learned that during the evacuation, Rei Minkai had driven the armored vehicle that was stuck in the rubble. Even the military drivers couldn't rescue it. Coupled with the scene of him driving the Arion against the Mars armored cavalry, Darzana couldn't believe that Rei Minkai was an ordinary person who loved to travel. "I don't see you. What do you think of Rei Minkai?" After the attack of the Mars armored cavalry, Darzana, who successfully met up with her assault ship, Poseidon, as well as her adjutant, Motohiko, asked her adjutant as usual. "I don't know. Although I have received some reports from Jiezhong Shui, other than that, I haven't seen Rei Minkai. I don't even know what kind of person he is. Therefore, I can't answer your question, Captain." Motohiko's answer was direct. So direct that Darzana secretly sighed. She looked up at the adjutant's indifferent expression. "I don't see you. Do you know why you're not popular?" Motohiko raised her eyes slightly and responded indifferently. "I heard that a straightforward personality is more likable." "You're not being straightforward, You're just shooting your mouth off. After Darzana refuted her adjutant, she couldn't help but feel a little better. Yes, no matter who Ray Minkai was, at least he wasn't from Mars. Moreover, in this situation where they lost contact with the headquarters, keeping Ray Minkai, a person with a suspicious identity, but whose piloting skills could compete with the Mars armored cavalry, might be an opportunity to maintain their own existence and, by time and space, to evacuate to the headquarters. I have to find a chance to talk to Ray Minkai. It's a pity that he's not a member of the Earth Alliance Army. Darzana's side had already made a decision, but Esiram's side was still in a state of stagnation. Ray Minkai was piloting Ariel, and Euphemia was waiting for an opportunity. She activated the gantry crane and slammed the heavy container directly into Ariel, thus establishing Ariel's victory in destroying Ariel. The cooperation between the two sides was so tacit and natural. For some reason, Esiram, who had witnessed the entire battle, felt envious. It was the first time in her life that Athelium, the princess of the Norman Empire, felt emotional about the relationship between others. Adalitzo, I might have to be willful for once. Looking at the two people returning to the cabin from the deck, Ethelum's gaze suddenly became firm. Your Highness. Adalizo subconsciously wanted to pull Ethelum back, but Ethelum stopped him. Don't worry, Adalitzo. Those two won't hurt me. That's right. Since Ethelum, Ray Minkai, and Euphemia came into contact with each other, she had always felt a sense of attention. It was not a malicious gaze. It was not a gaze with ulterior motives. It was just a gaze, an observation, as if she would attract the other party's attention in some way. And this was the special reason why Ethelum could attract the attention of others. It was probably her identity as the first princess of the Weiss Empire. Euphemia, she should have noticed. With this awareness, Ethelum walked through the cabin full of refugees, came to the gate leading to the deck, and stood in front of Ray Minkai and Euphemia. Excuse me, can I bother you for a moment? Ethelum asked softly. Hearing this, Ray Minkai and Euphemia looked at each other and nodded in unison. It seems that you have realized something. Ms. Ethelum. A few minutes later, under the secret guidance of White Cat Zero, Ray Minkai, Euphemia, Ethelum, and Adalitzo came to a remote and empty room inside the Poseidon. After putting the White Cat Zero on his shoulder on the ground, Ray Minkai looked at Ethelum, who was standing in the depths of the room. No one should pass by here for a while. If you have anything to say, just say it. White Cat Zero looked up at Ethelum, then turned and left the room, sneaking outside to keep watch. At this moment, the existence of White Cat Zero was only to prevent the conversation between Ray Minkai and Ethelum from being disturbed. Your Highness. Looking at Ray Minkai and Euphemia, Adalitzo, who was traumatized by the attack, still maintained a strong vigilance. He was afraid that after Ethelum did what she imagined, she would be attacked by the two. Don't worry, Adalitzo. They are not here to hurt us. After Ethelum comforted Adalitzo, she nodded at Ray Minkai and Euphemia. Ms. Euphemia, forgive me for being presumptuous, but I seem to have heard you mention that Mr. Ray Minkai is your knight. As the first sentence to open the topic, Ethelum targeted the words that Euphemia mentioned before. However, the one who answered Ethelum was not Euphemia, but Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai turned around, gently held Euphemia's right hand, and then softly admitted while looking at Euphemia's gentle eyes. Yes, Euphemia Libertania is my lovely highness. Ethelum's gaze wandered back and forth between Ray Minkai and Euphemia a few times, then slowly closed her eyes as if sighing. I'm so envious. Perhaps I also once yearned to have my own knight. As long as you have the heart to look for it, your knight will eventually be waiting for you on the road in the future. Euphemia looked at Ethelum and said, Perhaps. Ethelum sighed softly, and the expression on her face suddenly became firm. But before that, I have one more thing to do. Ms. Euphemia, Mr. Ray Minkai, I have a presumptuous request. Perhaps when I say this request, you will think it's ridiculous, or you'll want to kill me to avenge the people who have died because of this. Why? Euphemia asked back. And Ray Minkai, who was standing next to Euphemia, had a flash of understanding in his eyes. The current development of the situation has exceeded the original trajectory. Ethelem in front of him probably decided to confess her true identity as the first princess of the Mars Weiss Empire in front of Ray Minkai and Euphemia, not in front of Enophase and Ray Aryashu. If you want to ask why, then before I answer, please let me confess my identity. Ethelem took a deep breath, put her hands together in front of her chest, and said softly, "In the name of the first princess of the Weiss Empire." As the girl's almost singing voice sounded, a flash of colorful light lit up from her neck, dazzling Ray Minkai and Euphemia. The colorful light overflowed everywhere. Then, behind the colorful light, the image of the Nordic girl with short brown hair quietly disappeared. What reappeared in front of Ray Minkai and Euphemia was an elegant, noble girl with beautiful blonde hair, wearing a luxurious white gauze dress. "I'm very sorry. Now, please let me introduce myself again." The blonde, noble girl bowed slightly and saluted Ray Minkai and Euphemia. "I'm a first princess of the Mars Weiss Empire, Ethelem Weiss Illusia. This is my true identity." Sure enough, Ethelem chose to confess her identity in front of Ray Minkai and Euphemia. Was the previous one a substitute? Euphemia saw the scene of Ethelem confessing her identity and immediately saw the truth behind the attack. Yes, when landing on the ground, Her Royal Highness was unable to adapt to Earth's gravity and felt uncomfortable. For this reason, the captain of the guards insisted on sending a substitute to conduct a friendly visit on behalf of Her Royal Highness. Edelizo answered Euphemia's question first. "Is it true, Kai?" Euphemia looked sideways at Ray Minkai next to her. "Well, yes. Her Royal Highness Princess Ethelem's discomfort became the key to allowing the real Her Royal Highness Princess Ethelem to survive the attack. Moreover, in the war started by the Mars Orbit Knight who attacked Earth, because of the attack, Her Royal Highness Princess Ethelem, who is friendly to Earth, wanted to find a way to end this ridiculous war." Ray Minkai summarized his memory of Ethelem's position and actions in a simple way. At the same time, he wanted to show Ethelem that Ray Minkai and Euphemia had seen through Ethelem's identity from the beginning. Sure enough, Mr. Ray Minkai and Miss Euphemia had seen through my disguise from the beginning. Ray Minkai's almost frank words confirmed Ethelem's first instinct when she saw Ray Minkai and Euphemia. At the same time, she also understood why Euphemia took the initiative to talk to her when they first met. "Sorry, it's just that I was reminded of my past when I saw you, Princess Islem." Euphemia showed an apologetic smile. Perhaps Ethelem didn't know. For Euphemia, Ethelem, who was trying to find a way to end this ridiculous war, was somewhat similar to her, who was trying to find a way to eliminate the discrimination between the Empire's mainland and the satellite territories in the early years. "You used to be?" "Yes." Euphemia nodded. She looked back at Ray Minkai. "But that's already in the past. Princess Ethelem, is your wish to stop this war?" "Yes. I'm still alive. As long as the news that I'm still alive is passed back to Weiss, His Majesty the Emperor will definitely stop this war from continuing." Ray Minkai slowly shook his head in response to Ethelem's words. "I'm afraid things are not that simple. Mars, the capital of the Weiss Empire. The palace where His Majesty the Emperor of the Weiss Empire lived was very quiet. Whether it was the aisles leading to the depths of the palace or the vast courtyard, there were very few people walking around. Amidst this tranquility, there was a song that was like a clear spring slowly flowing through the palace. Look, that's the blue ocean. Over there are happy dolphins, seabirds spreading their wings and flying high in the sky. And there's even a vast and boundless azure sea." When the guards guarding the palace heard this song, in their minds, the flow of the song outlined a vast ocean scene with cheerful dolphins and seabirds flying high with the sea breeze. "Her Royal Highness's singing is so beautiful." The guards who were fascinated by the beautiful scenery in their imagination sighed subconsciously. Not long ago, A month before the first princess of the Weiss Empire, Her Royal Highness Princess Ethellam, went to Earth. The old emperor of the Weiss Empire, Regalia Weiss-Labas, suddenly announced that he was marrying a princess. No one knew the real name of this princess, and no one had seen the appearance of this princess. The only thing that the people of the Weiss Empire knew was that this princess had a voice that could enchant people's hearts. No matter who it was, as long as they heard the voice of this mysterious princess, they would be unable to help but enter a mysterious realm with the ups and downs of the song. There, they could see the legendary heavenly realm, and they could also personally feel the Weiss Empire, the deep sea that Mars could not have now. What a vast scenery! What an unreachable existence! As long as they heard the voice of the mysterious princess, the people of the Weiss Empire subconsciously imagined the shock of personally experiencing the vast and boundless sea after taking over Earth. Therefore, the voice of the princess was beautiful and sacred. In just a short month, the song that spread from the emperor's palace was enough to fascinate all the people of the Weiss Empire. However, the song that came from the depths of the palace suddenly stopped. The guards who woke up from the illusion looked at each other until one of the guards said a piece of news with some uncertainty. It's probably related to the news that Princess Ethellam was attacked. What? My son, Islam Visser Iliosia, has been attacked and killed? On the throne, the old Regalia Weiss-Labas looked down at the half-kneeling figure below. Yes, that's what the message from Earth said. The man lowered his head, not daring to look directly at the old emperor of the Weiss Empire, nor did he dare to look directly at the graceful figure standing beside the old emperor. That was the most mysterious existence of the Weiss Empire. The melodious and pleasant song that made people fall into the illusion of the ocean unknowingly came from her. Yes, did Ethellam also leave me? May I? What should I do? The old emperor slowly closed his eyes, and the graceful figure gently walked to the emperor's side and took his right hand. The interrupted song sounded again. Look, the vast ocean is waiting for you. Chapter 443. Aselam Vezil Asil. She is not only my descendant, but also my beloved compatriot. Not long ago, my beloved descendant and compatriot used her death to convey the truth to our Weiss Empire. It's this honorable behavior that makes us sober. In the name of the Weiss Empire's Regalia Visser-Labas, I declare war on Earth. Launch an attack on Earth. Burn the enemies of my clan, the enemies of my clan who murder my clan's heir, Islam Visser Iliosia. Ethellam's expectation for the current emperor of the Weiss Empire, Regalia Visser-Labas, did not come true. On the contrary, she, who had just confessed her true identity to Ray Minkai and Euphemia, welcomed the declaration of war by the Weiss Empire in the name of Regalia Visser-Labas. How could this be? How could Grandpa do this? Ethellam, who was also her grandfather, could not believe the declaration of war issued by the current emperor of the Weiss Empire, subconsciously raised her hand to cover her mouth. In the next second, Ethellam felt a slight pressure on her right shoulder. Ethellam, who instinctively looked back, saw Euphemia's delicate face with regret and understanding. This is the fate of the royal family, isn't it? From the moment you are born into the royal family, your fate has long been determined. Whether it is a prince or a princess, these are noble existences in the eyes of ordinary people. But at some point in the future, they will only be used as a bargaining chip to exchange for the interests of the country, and will be casually played by the person sitting on the throne. Euphemia's words were very straightforward, so straightforward that Ethellam could not find any words to refute. Even if the Weiss Empire was a new empire that had just been established less than 30 years ago, Ethellam had long known her fate. Now, perhaps it was the moment of fate that Euphemia said. Ethellam Visser Iliosia should perhaps sacrifice herself for the future of the empire and become a real dead person. Princess. Edelizo looked around at the refugees who were also shocked by Emperor Weiss's declaration of war. He whispered worriedly. Ethellam shook her head slowly, but didn't say anything. Salam. Perhaps you can only think about what to do next by yourself. We might be busy from now on. Ray Minkai didn't give Athelium a chance to ask for help. He knew that after this declaration of war, Poseidon, Darzana, and even the headquarters of the Earth Alliance Army, whose situation was still unknown, would definitely issue a recruitment order. They would recruit living forces from all the refugees who had survived the first wave of attacks to deal with the pressure of the upcoming war. As for Ray Minkai, this ordinary person who had just piloted the Earth Alliance Army's main body Arion without permission, but because of the situation, he did not deal with it in time. Under the background of this conscription order, he would inevitably be absorbed into the battle sequence of the Poseidon assault landing ship by Darzana. Is fighting the only way out? Athelium was very smart. She immediately thought of what Ray Minkai and Euphemia were going to do next. Miss Euphemia, you too? Euphemia nodded and said softly, yes. Although I have some experience in piloting the body, God won't let me pilot the body to the front line easily. So, my position should be on the bridge. If it's possible. Immediately afterward, the situation that Ray Minkai expected happened. A man in a blue uniform rushed into the cabin where the refugees were with a slightly nervous expression. He turned his head, patrolled back and forth among the refugees, and finally set his eyes on Ray Minkai and Euphemia. You are Ray Minkai and Euphemia? Yes. What's the matter? Ray Minkai stepped forward and blocked in front of Euphemia. You two, come with me. The man nodded to Ray Minkai and Euphemia, then looked at the other refugees. And you must register your information immediately and wait for the conscription order to be issued. Do you understand? Now, the war has begun. The war has begun. Following behind the man in the blue uniform, Ray Minkai and Euphemia saw Darzana and Juhu Koichiro standing behind her in the captain's room. The first sentence that the two sides said when they met was Darzana's opening statement. Ray Minkai smiled lightly, and he didn't care much about Darzana's serious expression. He casually responded to Darzana's opening statement. Yes. So, the reason why we are standing here now is that I and Euphemia have been conscripted. Darzana nodded and generously admitted that what Ray Minkai said was the confirmed fact. Yes, Ray Minkai and Euphemia are now combatants of Poseidon. When Darzana's voice fell, Juhu Koichiro, who stood behind her, stepped forward, looked directly into Ray Minkai's eyes, and solemnly announced the position arrangement of Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai, according to the wartime conscription order, is now appointed as a warrant officer and incorporated into the Iron Armor Cavalry pilot sequence. I have no objection. But what about Euphemia? Is she also a pilot of Arion, like me? Ray Minkai was not surprised by the result of being conscripted as a member of Poseidon. On the contrary, this was the result that Ray Minkai himself expected. Otherwise, Ray Minkai wouldn't have tried so hard to drive Arion to kill Uri. No. Euphemia will stay on the bridge as a correspondent. Now, whether it is the bridge or other positions, there's a shortage of personnel. Although this problem is not too prominent in normal times, given the current wartime situation, I hope that the personnel that can be recruited can enter the position in the shortest time possible. The person who answered Ray Minkai's question was Darzana. I have no objection to this arrangement. Euphemia took the lead to express her attitude, then looked at Darzana. Then, Captain, I hope to start familiarizing myself with my position now. Darzana, who didn't expect Euphemia to be so enthusiastic, was a little surprised, but she didn't say anything. After a brief explanation to Juhu Koichiro, she took Euphemia and left the captain's room. I didn't expect that we two men would be the last. From now on, please advise us. Juhu Koichiro smiled and took the initiative to extend his right hand. I'm the one who needs advice. Captain Juhu. Ray Minkai smiled and shook hands with Juhu Koichiro. The opportunity he had been waiting for appeared in front of Ray Minkai in such a coincidental way. Captain Juhu, I hope to see my body now. You're really impatient. Good. There are a few empty bodies. Come with me. The issuance of the conscription order shrouded Poseidon in the dark clouds of war, but there was more anger. anger at the Mars orbit knight who started the war. Also anger at the spy who launched a surprise attack and killed the princess of Mars. Standing on the side, Rai Arya Shu, who was standing in line, was silent as if all of this had nothing to do with her. Even when the staff asked her what she thought, Rai would casually find an excuse. If it weren't for the fact that there were similar people among the refugees present, Rai would have been questioned. Are you not going to register information? At this time, a young girl in a white uniform with her beautiful pink hair tied up in a bun stood in front of Leon with a friendly smile. Are you that man's girlfriend? The man in Rai's mouth was undoubtedly Ray Minkai. Whether it was driving the armored vehicle or driving the Arion, Ray Minkai was undoubtedly an extremely conspicuous existence. By the way, Euphemia, who was with Ray Minkai, was even more so. Man? Are you talking about Kai? Yes. Euphemia thought for a moment and understood the meaning of Rai's words. Rai nodded silently, but she still had no intention of changing her mind. She glanced at the document in Euphemia's hand, raised her hand, and raised the hood of her sweater, then turned and left. It seems that the situation is a bit tricky. The shadow of war became heavier and heavier with the declaration of war by the Emperor of the Weiss Empire, Regalia Weiss Labas. This was especially true for Serene, who was ordered to stay in Kaludiyu's Yonglu city because of Torlin's death. The declaration of war by the Vether Emperor, Regalia Vether Labas, was undoubtedly the final proof of Princess Ethelum's death to Slain. He was engulfed by hatred, affected by the gloominess brought about by the death of the object of his admiration and other emotions. Serene seemed to be unable to control his actions. Again and again, he wandered in the place where his instincts could allow him to fulfill the wish from the bottom of his heart until Count Kaludiyu discovered him. Pa! The heavy cane mercilessly hit Serene's cheek. Serene, who fell heavily on the cold floor, didn't resist. Instead, he silently looked up at Count Kaludiyu, who knocked him down. On the rapidly swollen cheek was a pair of eyes filled with hatred and a deathly stillness. Do you hate me? Serene Tyalot. Kaludiyu, who put down his cane, calmly looked into Serene's hate-filled eyes. No, I don't hate you. I only hate the person who killed Princess Izeralam, and I hate the person who couldn't protect Princess Izeralam. Serene's words made Kaludiyu's right hand tighten on his cane, but he didn't take any further action. In Kaludiyu's opinion, Serene's words had already touched his bottom line. A mere insignificant earthling dared to have such delusions and attempt to protect the first princess of the Weiss Empire? What a joke. However, Kaludiyu suddenly sneered. Are you ashamed? Very good. Serene Tyalot, I'll give you a chance. Immediately, I, Count Kaludiyu, and my ally, Count Zasbrum, will send subordinates to Seed Island to search for the secret base that the Earthlings may have set up there. You, Serene Tyalot, will assist our subordinates in completing this mission. After that, could bypass Serene from the left, but after walking for a distance, he stopped. Serene Tyalot, if you perform well in this mission, I might as well give you a chance to participate in the battle of revenge for the late Princess Izeralam. The sound of the cane hitting the ground and Kaludiyu's footsteps gradually faded away. Serene, who had fallen to the ground, slowly stood up and walked to his room step by step. Revenge. Yes. Now, Serene Tyalot only had the desire to avenge Princess Izeralam. For this, Serene was willing to give up his life. Serene Tyalot was an earthling, but she still treated him kindly. Serene Tyalot was willing to give up his life. The sun set and the moon rose, and the tide rose and fell. When the night sky was illuminated by the dawn, Poseidon, which had hurriedly completed a rough recruitment mission, finally arrived at the waters near Seed Island. From afar, Ray Minkai looked at the island that had undergone drastic changes in the shocking event 15 years ago. After a moment of silence, he turned around and returned to Neku, waiting for the battle to begin. Fermion, who had originally occupied the island, was now under the control of the Gemini, waiting for the Gemini's interrogation. But Ray Minkai could not guarantee that the Martian knight who was fighting for the territory did not notice the existence of the island. This was especially true for Zasbrum, who had personally witnessed his fiancée sacrifice her life on this island 15 years ago. He would definitely be interested in this island. It's here. White Cat Zero, lying on Rei Mingkai's shoulder, raised its head slightly and looked at the ceiling. Its gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the ceiling made of cold steel plates and directly see the blue sky outside. Rei Mingkai nodded at the White Cat Zero's warning, then turned around and entered Arian, which was assigned to him. Bridge. This is Mustana 11. What's the situation? The next second, Euphemia's voice sounded in the communication channel. This is the bridge. Mustana 11. There are no abnormalities on the radar. In the bridge, Euphemia looked left and right. After realizing that no one was paying attention to her, she lowered her voice. Kai, what's the situation? Yes. State Zero found some abnormalities. For Poseidon's radar, Rei Mingkai trusted the White Cat Zero more, which could act as a biological radar. In previous battles, the White Cat Zero's early warning had rarely made mistakes. Understood. Begin the investigation immediately. 30 seconds later, the ear-piercing alarm instantly shattered the silence of Poseidon. Euphemia's voice sounded from the broadcast. Warning! Warning! Several unidentified flying objects have been discovered in the southeast direction of Poseidon. The entire ship has entered Level 1 combat mode. The entire ship has entered Level 1 combat mode. Are you here to mourn your deceased wife? Count Zasbrum. As the elevator slowly rose, Rei Mingkai looked at the gradually expanding blue sky on the screen and said softly, Chapter 444. What? Deucalion's remains are hidden on Seed Island? Zasbrum couldn't help but show a shocked expression on his face. This was the first time since the upheaval 15 years ago that Zasbrum, who was determined to avenge his fiancée, Viscount Volin, who shouldn't have died, showed emotions. However, this emotion that he hadn't experienced in 15 years didn't stay on Zasbrum's face for long. Who are you? How do you know about Deucalion's existence? The screen in front of him showed a woman with long black hair and a fierce aura between her eyebrows. Especially her appearance. When Zasbrum saw her for the first time, he subconsciously thought of his fiancée who had died 15 years ago. Honorable Count Zasbrum, I am Fianna von Riot. Facing Zasbrum's question, the woman who brought the news of Deucalion faintly reported her name. Fianna von Riot. When he heard the surname behind the name, Zasbrum's eyes suddenly shrank. Too long. It's really too long. Since the death of his fiancée, Volin, the Riant family, which lost the protection of the orbital knight, disappeared. During these 15 years, out of longing for his fiancée, Zasbrum also wanted to reach out several times to help the increasingly down-and-out Riant family. But because he couldn't find the descendants of the Riant family, he couldn't do it. Therefore, when the woman who claimed to be a descendant of the Riant family and offered the whereabouts of Deucalion with both hands appeared, Zasbrum was shocked. After a moment of silence, Zasbrum raised his head again and looked at the screen in front of him, and even looked at the woman in the screen. That's right. When he saw the woman's face was somewhat similar to his fiancée who had died a long time ago, as well as the emotional fluctuations brought by the long-dormant memories of Zasbrum. Zasbrum almost instantly recognized the existence of the woman. Ew, where did the Riant family go in the past 15 years? Tell me about it. Hearing this question, on the other side of Earth, Fianna, a descendant of the Riant family, sighed inwardly. Although the process was somewhat thrilling, the trap set up by Rei Mingkai finally began to take effect. Reinhardt. This book has two settings in order to perfect Viscount Volin's family background and the subsequent plot. This was a surname that had never appeared in the original story. After Rei Mingkai ordered Xia Yufeng and Xia Yulan to capture Fermian's Yanglu city, they began to appear in Rei Mingkai's vision. Rei Mingkai, who was interested in this surname, had Gemini interrogate Fermian. In the end, Rei Mingkai was surprised. Who would have thought that this seemingly ordinary surname was actually related to the mastermind behind the scenes of the first season, Zasbrum? Moreover, their relationship was not shallow. Valen von Reinhardt, this woman, who had been dead for 15 years, also appeared in Ray Minkai's plan. As his mind became active, Ray Minkai gave this new plan to Fianna, who was somewhat similar to Valen in terms of overall temperament and appearance. After some preparations, combined with some information obtained from Fermian's interrogation, Fianna transformed into a descendant of the Rant family that had disappeared for a long time and appeared in front of Zasbrum with this identity. Honorable Count Zasbrum, ever since my Rant family lost the protection of Viscount Volin, our living space and treatment became worse and worse. In order to not let the last bloodline of the family be worn out in endless pain and torture. 10 years ago, the elders of the Rant family moved the family from the Wiser Empire to Earth with great courage and became a member of Earth's people. Fianna respectfully explained the background of the characters in the original plan one by one. Did they defect from Wiser? This thought uncontrollably surfaced in Zasbrum's mind, but Zasbrum strangled it in the next second. If the Rant family really defected, they wouldn't appear in front of him again and bring him the whereabouts of Deucalion. The Rant family lurked on Earth and launched a search operation for Deucalion in the past 10 years. Zasbrum outlined in his mind the trajectory of the Rant family's actions in the past 10 years. Yes, Count Zasbrum, this is the long-cherished wish of the Rant family. Although we lost the protection of Viscount Volin, we can't allow Viscount Volin's sword to wander outside and be manipulated by Earth's people. Fianna respectfully lowered her head and recounted the efforts and price the Rant family paid in the past 10 years to search for the lost Deucalion. A bunch of ignorant fellows. However, after Fianna finished talking about how the Rant family paid a huge price but only found the remains of Deucalion, Zasbrum only gave a cold evaluation. It turned out that for the sake of Viscount Volin, I would still have a trace of pity for the Rant family. But what I never thought was that you would be so unrepentant. I can understand your actions of leaving Wiser and lurking on Earth. But you, the Rant family, after paying a huge price, what did you get? Zasbrum's voice became louder and hoarser. Deucalion, that's right. It was once Viscount Volin's sword. But it wasn't the righteousness that the Rant family was pursuing. Why are we, the Orbital Knight, standing here? Why did Viscount Volin sacrifice back then? Zasbrum's gaze became sharper. He stared at the woman on the screen and clenched his fists. If the Rant family can't see this clearly, then today I'll treat it as if the Rant family never existed. Disappear from my sight. Even if Viscount Volin was still alive, I'm afraid the current Rant family would disdain to acknowledge them. Zasbrum's rebuke made the woman on the screen fall silent. It wasn't until a moment later that the woman on the screen faintly said something that made Zasbrum speechless. From top to bottom, I'm the only one left in the Rant family. Count Zasbrum, I'm very sorry. I've been presumptuous. Wait. Fianna's light words made Zasbrum hurriedly stop her from cutting off the communication. You're the only one left in the Rant family? Yes. It's as you can see. Count Zasbrum, if not for the Count's Yanglu City being close enough to Earth, I'm afraid the communication device our Rant family has preserved might not have been able to contact you. Fianna waved the worn-out communication device in her hand and bowed to Zasbrum again. Now, as the last member of the Rant family, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Count Zasbrum. Then, I, Fianna von Rant, will follow the instructions of the family elders and follow the path Viscount Volin walked, completing the great cause Viscount Volin never completed. Let's part ways here. I wish you the best of luck. Count Zasbrum. Fianna didn't give Zasbrum a chance to speak. After quickly and clearly saying the lines in her heart, she immediately pressed the button to cut off the communication. Huh! The screen went black, and Zasbrum's face disappeared behind the pitch-black screen. 3, 2, 1. Fianna didn't leave after cutting off the communication. Instead, She silently counted to 3 in her heart. Then, the screen on the communication device lit up, and Zasbrum's face appeared again. Descendant of Rayant, let me assist you in accomplishing your great cause. Then, join me, and we'll accomplish the great cause that Viscount Volin failed to accomplish back then. Zasbrum's declaration made the corner of Fianna's mouth curl up slightly. She bowed again and said, "Yes, I'll follow your will." Count Zasbrum. After cutting off the communication with Zasbrum, Fianna slowly let out a sigh of relief. Although the implementation of the plan had some hiccups, it could be said to be very smooth. Count Zasbrum, who used the assassination of Princess Iceland to set off the first wave of attack by the orbital knight to attack Earth, was easier to deceive than she had imagined. Perhaps it was because of the longing for his dead fiancée, as well as the guilt of not being able to lend a helping hand in time while watching the Rant family decline. Fianna had hypothesized these reasons before, but she had never gotten an accurate answer. But no matter what the answer was, Fianna had succeeded in gaining the trust of Count Zasbrum as the last remaining descendant of the Rant family in this world. Therefore, in the next operation, as long as Fianna's ability could be appreciated by Count Zasbrum, then it meant that Raymond Kai's chess piece had successfully nailed itself into the orbital night camp. 12 hours later, a roar came from the sky. Fianna, who was standing alone on the edge of the cliff, looked up and saw a carrier aircraft made by the Weiss Empire quickly descending from the sky and circling back and forth above Fianna's head. It seemed to be confirming Fianna's identity. The sharp-eyed Fianna didn't immediately send out a rendezvous signal. Instead, she focused her gaze on the carrier aircraft. Fianna saw many of the same carrier aircraft in Fermienless City. However, under the belly of the carrier, there was an unfamiliar airframe. Is that the iron cavalry created by using the Aldnoah furnace? It seems to have some skills. The slender body, slender shape, and the pair of slightly bulging devices on the waist made Fianna subconsciously think that this was an airframe with good close combat ability when she first saw this unfamiliar airframe. Therefore, under Fianna's observation, the carrier aircraft that sent out a rendezvous signal to Fianna gradually landed on the open space behind Fianna. "I'm Serene Tanulot. I'm here on the order of Count Caludio to welcome you, sir." The person who walked down from the carrier aircraft was a boy who looked to be about 16 years old. After confirming Fianna's face, he respectfully saluted Fianna. "Serene Tanulot? Hello, I'm Fianna von Rayant. You said you're here on the order of Count Caludio?" Fianna withdrew her gaze from the unfamiliar silver body and looked at the boy in front of her. "Yes, I'm here on the order of Count Caludio to deliver a gift carefully prepared by Count Zasbrum to Sir Rayant." Serene slightly lowered his head and put on a very respectful posture. He didn't have the slightest intention of looking at Fianna. "Is that so? Is it that body?" "Yes. In addition, Count Zasbrum has something to give you, sir." Serene reached into his pocket and took out a delicately wrapped box. Serene handed it to Fianna and said, "Sir, please accept it. This is also a gift prepared by Count Zasbrum for you." Looking at the box in Serene's hand, Fianna, who couldn't see what was inside, suddenly smiled. "It seems that without this gift, I'm afraid I can't even start up the body." After saying that, Fianna took the box from Slane's hand and walked to Slane's side. She raised her hand and patted Slane's shoulder. "Let's go. Serene Tanulot. Since the two earls sent you here, you should assist me well. Complete my mission." "Yes, Sir Rayant." "Warning, warning, warning." In the Sea God's bridge, Euphemia's warning constantly sounded. Multiple targets have appeared southeast of the Sea God. According to the current speed, we will encounter them in 15 minutes. Euphemia quickly reported what she saw as she looked up at Darzana, who was sitting on the captain's seat. It seems that letting Miss Euphemia sit on the bridge was the right decision. Darzana first expressed her appreciation for Euphemia's judgment, then immediately issued a combat order. Have the Iron Cavalry Squad attack. The entire ship enter Level 1 combat state. Prepare for anti-air defense. "I'm missing." "Yes, Captain. The entire ship enter level 1 combat state. Prepare for anti-air defense. After Darzana gave the first order, the adjutant immediately took over the battle arrangements. In the ear-piercing alarm, for shadows quickly rushed out from the sea of clouds and pounced on the sea god in a condescending manner. Among them, one of the black silhouettes changed its direction before it dived down. It turned and landed quickly on the seed island. It was only after it had dropped the silver airframe on the seed island that the black silhouette pulled the airframe up and flew back into the sky. Area 2. It seems that the Weiss Empire's technology is also quite good, but I don't know how the Knight Captain is doing. Fianna played with the red teardrop-shaped pendant in her hand. She raised her head and looked at the sea god that was quickly heading towards Seed Island amidst the commotion of the transport aircraft. Chapter 445. After Fianna's Area 2 landed, the carrier aircraft hovering above Poseidon dispersed and no longer harassed Poseidon. At the same time, the moment they scattered, a black figure followed behind Area 2 and landed on the ground with a loud crash. Another airframe? It seems that Zasbram doesn't fully trust me. Fianna's gaze landed on the black airframe that landed next to her. Four strange fist-shaped additional equipment were installed around the black body in an orderly manner. In the shadow cast by the four huge fist-shaped equipment, there was a steel body that was even smaller than Area 2. Isn't this Harith piloted by Fermion? Is it the same airframe? When Fianna sized up this new airframe, she immediately recognized this airframe's true body. What was strange was that after this airframe, which was very similar to Horus, landed, it did not contact Fianna. Instead, it took the initiative to step forward, released all the four strange fish-shaped equipment, and went straight to Poseidon. Fianna frowned slightly at the clean and efficient way of doing things. Immediately after, a message was sent to Area 2. Let me focus on finding Deucalion? Interesting. Unexpectedly, after Zasbram generously gave out an airframe, he didn't let Fianna participate in the battle and let her use this airframe to find Deucalion, who might be hiding here on Seed Island. Although this plan made Fianna somewhat unhappy, she was also relieved. After all, compared to the original plan, it was much easier to let Ray Minkai fight with her. Harith's airframe, do your best. Fianna gladly accepted Zasbram's arrangement. On the deck of Poseidon, Arion's team was assisting Poseidon's anti-aircraft artillery in defense. However, Arion's team and Poseidon's anti-aircraft artillery couldn't cause any damage to the strange fists hovering around Poseidon. The AP bullets fired by the 50mm submachine gun in Arion's team couldn't penetrate the fists flying around Poseidon. Even if there were pilots who saw the situation and changed their bullets in time, it didn't help. The dense barrage of bullets in the eyes of ordinary people couldn't stop the strange flying fists. Boom! When the bullets fired by the 50mm submachine gun powerlessly left insignificant sparks on the hard armor of the flying fists, Poseidon's front deck became the first damage Poseidon suffered since the start of the battle. The powerful impact instantly stagnated Poseidon's momentum. It looked like it was about to crash into Seed Island due to inertia. Moreover, when Poseidon suffered heavy damage, Arion's team, who stayed on the deck to defend together, suffered the same fate. Torn apart, smashed into pieces, there were even flying fists that fell from the sky and directly hammered the deck. In the blink of an eye, the few remaining Arians on Sea God were almost completely depleted. Team Phyllis annihilated. Euphemia, she slowly closed Poseidon's team. Darzana clenched her fists tightly and resisted the fear of death that emerged because of the annihilation of Team Phyllis. Where's Ray Minkai? Team Astana, arrive on the deck. Immediately launch the defense. Euphemia's report made Darzana breathe a sigh of relief. Ray Minkai's timely attack might allow Poseidon to survive this encounter. Horus? Is that Zabibram? Ray Minkai, who arrived on the deck, didn't immediately launch an anti-air defense like Team Phyllis. Instead, he checked the surrounding situation, especially the situation on the Seed Island not far away. Lei Mingkai's focus was on observing the situation. Mustana 11. This is Mustana 33. What's the situation? Following behind Arion on the deck were two orange-painted armored cavalry. The people piloting these two armored cavalry were none other than Jiamizuka in Naysail and Net Wenyanzi. After Weiss Empire officially declared war, Jiamizuka in Naysail and Net Wenyanzi were naturally transferred to the official battle order on the spot. At the same time, they were also incorporated into Rei Mingkai's team Mustana. Although this didn't change much from the original historical trajectory, Mustana 11's identification number was transferred from Jiamizuka in Naysail to Rei Mingkai. Not good. The enemy's body can use a type of flying weapon called Rocket Fist. When it attacks the target in the shape of a fist, the destructive power it can cause is terrifying. While Rei Mingkai was explaining, Arion, who was piloting Team Phyllis, gestured at the terrifying wound that paralyzed Poseidon. What's the countermeasure? Jiamizuka and Naysail's gaze fell on the screen and looked at the rocket fist that was being chased by the crosshair. Rei Mingkai smiled when he heard this question. Calculate the distance. Then use the explosion from the he-bomb to cause it to deviate from its intended flight path. It can't be destroyed. The moment Rei Mingkai's words fell, the world burial in Nathan immediately began to calculate the secret position, and in the interval, raised another question. It can be destroyed, but we have to wait for a suitable opportunity. The communication between Rei Mingkai and Jiamizuka in Naysail was very short, because the enemy wouldn't allow Rei Mingkai and Jiamizuka in Naysail to speculate and calculate their own attack methods and see through their weaknesses. In the sky, the four rocket fists swept through the air like lightning under the powerful propulsion provided by the thrusters and pounced towards Poseidon from all directions. I'll guard the west, south, north, north. Under the leadership of Rei Mingkai and Jiamizuka in Naysail, the two decisive partners, Net Wenyanzi, who had just experienced a battle, gradually stabilized and formed an anti-air firepower net with the two that could temporarily stabilize the formation. But this was not the way. Although Rei Mingkai knew that he could use the he-bomb to deviate the rocket fists at a suitable distance, Rei Mingkai wasn't good at calculation. Mustana 33. How's the situation on your side? Calculation complete. Yunzi, correct, 7 mil to the left. Jiamizuka in Naysail could be said to be multitasking now. When dealing with the rocket fists, she even diverted her attention to calculate the distance mentioned by Rei Mingkai. Bang! Net Wenyanzi was piloting Arrowwing equipped with a sniper cannon. After receiving the prompt from Jiamizuka in Naysail, she immediately took action. In the roar of the sniper cannon, the menacing rocket fists were really affected by the pressure caused by the explosion of the he-bomb at a suitable distance, thus deviating from their original flight path. Success! Rei Mingkai is indeed a mysterious man. According to Rei Mingkai's prompt, Jiamizuka in Naysail, who had successfully neutralized the rocket fists, glanced at Arrowwing piloted by Rei Mingkai, then once again threw herself into the follow-up attack. Jiamizuka in Naysail's calculations were terrifying. Under Rei Mingkai's prompt, the rocket fist that wiped out the Felix team no longer had the ferocious and terrifying attack at the beginning. Every time it got close to Poseidon, Rei Mingkai, Jiamizuka in Naysail, and Net Wenyanzi would work together to send it flying. Success! After Rei Mingkai's attack successfully neutralized the rocket fists, the people on the bridge of Poseidon could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. It's not over yet. The enemy's attack has only been temporarily delayed. Poseidon, can you still move now? The Commodore Zana looked at the helmsman, Nina. No, the rudder is out of control. Now Poseidon can't do anything other than move straight. Nina's news wasn't good news. Even if Rei Mingkai and Jiamizuka in Naysail could block the enemy's attack, they couldn't bring true safety to Poseidon. After all, Arrowwing's ammunition was limited. Moreover, The enemy's main method of attack from the beginning to the end was the fiery fists that flew back and forth. Not to mention, there were also the carriers of the Weiss Empire hovering around. Although they didn't seem to have any heavy firepower, they were still a threat to Poseidon, which had now lost its power. What should we do? Darzana's gaze fell on Arrowwing, who was next to the bridge, resisting the rocket fists. Mustana 11. The weakness you mentioned before, is it the weakness of those fists that will decrease its defense when it opens its fist? Amidst the sounds of the sniper cannons, Jamizuka in Asail asked Ray Minkai again. Yes, when the fist is clenched, its defense will be at its peak. In this state, neither AP nor he rounds can cause any damage to it. Immediately afterward, Jamizuka in Asail continued Ray Minkai's words. If the fist opens, then its powerful defense will also be lost? I understand. As soon as she finished speaking, the orange training machine Sleipnir driven by Jamizuka in Nasail rushed out and came to the end of the deck alone. Yunzi, stop attacking. Yunzi obviously couldn't keep up with Jamizuka in Nasail's thoughts, and she instinctively stopped the machine shooting. Then, a shadow immediately shrouded Sleipnir's head. It was the rocket fists. After discovering that Sleipnir suddenly left the defensive formation, the rocket fists hovering around Poseidon immediately seized this opportunity and tried to kill Sleipnir. However, the moment the rocket fists opened its palm and tried to crush Sleipnir, a sudden explosion suddenly occurred in the palm of the rocket fists. In a violent explosion, two pitch-black steel fingers were blown away on the spot, and the rocket fists, which had a powerful defense not long ago, plunged into the scene next to Poseidon. Boom! A huge splash of water soared into the sky. Mustana 33. You're too risky. Ray Minkai's Arion put down the 50mm submachine gun in his hand. First one. Mizuka, in Asail, shook her head, then looked at the other rocket fists hovering around Poseidon. The situation changed again. While Ray Minkai and the others were fighting fiercely, Fianna had already walked down from Arceur 2 and walked alone along the path created by Arceur 2's plasma beam soared into the underground facility on Seed Island. The Knight's information is not wrong. Deucalion is really here. Fianna came to the deepest part of the underground facility and looked at the broken machine fixed above the rock wall. Then, Fianna, who looked around, also saw the huge space in front of the broken machine. Battleship? I'm afraid this is the battleship that the Knight mentioned. Broken machine, Deucalion, and the brand new, huge battleship. Fianna's choice was naturally the broken Deucalion. It's time for this battle to end. A few minutes later, a huge explosion suddenly set off in the depths of Seed Island. The huge column of smoke suddenly attracted everyone's attention. What happened? In the midst of this explosion, what made Darzana and the others even more astonished was that a pitch-black tunnel had actually been blasted open by this explosion. Looking at the dark passage gradually illuminated by the setting sun and the smoke, a bold idea immediately arose in Darzana's mind. Everyone has been captured. Poseidon, full speed, head toward the port. Hurry. When Darzana made her choice, Ray Minkai also made his choice. Mustana 22, Mustana 33. You stay here and assist Poseidon to enter the port. I'll deal with the Mars machine. After that, Ray Minkai did not wait for Jamizuka in Asail and not see Yunzi to react. He directly activated Arion's stabilizing wings and jumped off the deck of Poseidon and landed on the dock next to it. Mustana 11. What should we do? Natsuya Yunzi, whose reaction was always slow, was at a loss as she watched Ray Minkai's Arion leave. Nothing. We just need to protect Poseidon. Jamizuka in Asail was not surprised that Ray Minkai left alone. On the contrary, he felt that if Ray Minkai did not take advantage of this chaotic opportunity to do something, Jamizuka in Asail would not think that Ray Minkai was such a mysterious person. Poseidon, which rushed into the port at full speed, and Arion, who was alone, stood out. The extremely eye-catching difference made the Mars machine's attack pause for a moment. But soon, compared to Poseidon, which cut off its escape route, Arion, which was piloted by Ray Minkai, was more threatening. For a while, the rockets that were trying to launch the last wave of attack on Poseidon changed their posture and rushed toward Arion, who had already jumped onto the cliff. "Are they coming?" Before Arion rushed into the woods, he turned around abruptly, raised the 50mm submachine gun in his hand, and fired a series of shots. The heat bullet happened to be stuck at the critical distance of the flying rocket punch. Once again, the previous scene of the flying rocket punch being sent flying was repeated. Bang! Bang! Amidst a series of explosions, the fists that were chasing after Arion were all deflected. They slammed into the dense forest and disappeared without a trace. The enemy was in front. However, the moment Arion successfully rushed out of the woods, a dazzling light suddenly lit up in front of Ray Minkai's eyes. When the hair on his body stood on end, Ray Minkai's survival instinct made him make a prompt decision to force Arion to change its charging posture. He retreated a few meters and barely avoided the sudden plasma beam sword. "Hey, this isn't a joke, right?" The light set off by the beam sword disappeared quietly, and Ari too appeared behind the light. Through some means, Ray Minkai knew that the person sitting in Ari 2 was Fianna, who had joined Zasbrum's side according to his plan. The next second, the plasma beam sword in Ari 2's hand suddenly slashed toward the woods next to it. Looking at the collapsed and burned trees under the plasma beam sword, Ray Minkai suddenly understood what this seemingly demonstration meant. Well done, Fianna. Start your tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.